And we're live, and I'm back. And I did a live stream exactly a month ago, maybe a little more, saying I'm back, and then I disappeared for a month, so I apologize. But now I'm actually back. As you can see, I'm back in my usual setup, back in the beautiful Western Galilee after a little over a month of travels. It's hard to stream while traveling. It's hard to get into the mindset and find the time and the good internet connection. There's a lot of factors that play into it, but I'm back. I'm excited to be back. My plan is to be doing 2 streams a week. Those joining here on Discord, great to see you. Those joining elsewhere, good to see you again. I missed y'all. What are we going to talk about again? Or what are we going to talk about today? I just put some, I don't want to say random topics. They're important topics, but Israel-Palestine, Jeffrey Epstein, and Iran, what's going on? Whoever wants to hop on here on Discord, raise your hand. If you're watching this on one of the other platforms and want to join the stream to ask questions, share thoughts, or challenge something I say, join Discord and then we'll bring you on as well. Let's start with Epstein. So I'm not going to get deep into this now, but I'm going to put out an analysis. I think a lot of my anti-Zionist viewers aren't going to like this, but a lot of the narratives around Epstein are a little bit out there and not really based on any evidence. There's kind of like a mass delusion happening when it comes to Epstein. The evidence of him running a blackmail operation is so uncompelling, close to non-existent in terms of evidence, and the hypothesis doesn't even make sense. What's the hypothesis? He was blackmailing lawmakers, so he was spending time with primarily academics and entrepreneurs. He didn't even spend much time with lawmakers. He didn't seem to have an interest in lawmakers. Not to mention, there's just many other reasons why the blackmail operation of that scale just wouldn't work, why we would see whistleblowers and leaks, why the evidence would look different if this existed. I'm not going to get into all the details, but I'm putting this out there because if somebody does believe that there's good evidence of him running a blackmail operation, please send it to me because it'll help inform my opinion. Or just make your best case in the comments of why you think it's obvious he was running a blackmail operation. And also just this idea that anybody who associated him is guilty of raping a child, like that's also kind of crazy. I do think Epstein had a thing for teenage girls. I think that was his primary sexual attraction. And I think he was sleeping with them, or we could call it raping them because it is statutory rape. But that's not what was happening on the island. The island, based on everything we know, it was primarily like 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, young women, which most adult men are into, which is kind of where his like allure came from. Like, why did everybody want to go to this island? Well, imagine there's an island with these beautiful young women that it's just free for, have fun. You can see why that would be appealing and why there's like a magnetism to it. And then the second he becomes this like super networker, more people want to be in his circle, and then people who might not even be into the young women are going to be into him because he has all these networks. He has this vast network. Like and again, I'm going to get more into the details, but I'm just high level throwing it out. There's just a much less interesting, much less dark explanation for him and his appeal. So I think him and maybe his close circle were engaging in statutory rape of teenage girls for sure. But most people associating with him were either associating him with him because he had a very deep network and they wanted access to money or connections, or they just wanted, access to young women. Often entrepreneurs and successful people, they don't have time to go out and get young women. They are worried about being with prostitutes who might like leak something. But here they're all like pre-vetted. It's a safe space. It's trusted. You can see why there would be a wide scale appeal to that, and why that would kind of make him this magnetic figure. Maybe that's all I'll say about Epstein now. I just wanted to give a high-level take on it. But yeah, in short, the blackmail thing doesn't seem to make sense. The mass rape of children doesn't seem to be corroborated by evidence. But I'm not going to go deep because I just want to fully hash out my thoughts on this before going deeper into it. And I also want to put this out there so people can challenge me or send me thoughts or evidence to help inform my opinion before I do a deeper analysis. What else do we have? Iran. we don't really know what's going on in Iran. We're getting a lot of mixed reports. It is interesting how a lot of the same people who have really been engaging in, atrocity denial when it comes to Gaza, trying to cast doubt on the numbers, when the numbers that come out of Gaza are based on having a name, an ID number, a date of birth, and a gender, all of which exist in the Palestinian population registry, which Israel has access to, or not even has access to, controls, right? That's a very high level, high quality data that's verifiable. And people have just been spending years just casting doubt, misrepresenting, not believing. And most people did not do this dishonestly. They just did not have a good source of information. They didn't know who to believe or trust. They didn't know that this is verifiable data. But these same people now, when it comes to Iran, are saying 50,000 people killed, 100,000 people killed, based on nothing, based on just these random reports. Now, the situation in Iran, I mean, definitely thousands have been killed. Protesters, civilians have been massacred. Thousands. Is it tens of thousands? Again, I'm not sure, but what we're not seeing is we're not seeing videos and photos. And there's an internet blackout, but there is stuff coming out. We are not seeing videos and photos of mass killings all over the place, right? We have seen some, but not to the extent that is described by people saying 50,000, 100,000. So I'm not saying this in any way to minimize what's happening there. Many thousands have been massacred. The Iranian people deserve liberation. They deserve a better government. But I also want us to be careful about these war propagandists who are going to throw out any claim only to garner up support for U.S. intervention. But also U.S. intervention, what even is the plan? Is there any plan to defeat the current government with airstrikes? What does that look like? Who's going to replace them? There's no next in line just waiting to replace the Ayatollah. The most powerful entity in Iran is the Revolutionary Guard. You can't defeat them without an actual boots on the ground and a long-term occupation. You're not going to have the son of the Shah just march in and take power after a bunch of airstrikes. So what are people actually asking for? What's the actual plan? Now, I do think Trump is, let's see what happens, but I think he's been engaging in negotiations with Iran, which I think is positive. There's another negotiation this Thursday in Switzerland. Hopefully it goes well. But the best path is not to bomb them and just hope they have a better government. When's the last time that worked? It's to actually try to work with them to get them to moderate their position, which actually they have been doing, even without U.S. pressure. So one thing many people don't know is that there's a law in Iran that you need to cover your head, but it's no longer enforced in places like Tehran, simply because the younger generation are just so secular. They are refusing to cover their heads, so it's not enforceable. So we're already seeing the culture shift and the way the law is enforced shift because the people, the demographic, is not accepting it. We're also seeing Iran warm up to UAE. They're starting to warm up to US and Israeli ally, a Sunni nation. Isn't that interesting? So instead of thinking that we should just solve this by bombing the shit out of them and somehow it's going to figure itself out, let's look at the trajectory of a theocratic regime that is moderating over time and put essential pressure on them both internally and externally to get them to continue to make these changes. This is likely the path of far less death and destruction. So, some thoughts on that. Let's see. Yuri's saying Epstein is a good thing. I'd rather stupid people focus on these nonsense stories than geopolitics. Well, that's an interesting point. And I'll tell you, what is the connection between my interest in the Gaza death toll and Epstein? It's simply because there's something I care much more about more than I care about Israel-Palestine and more than I care about Epstein is truth. And our society's lack of ability to discover truth. I think it's one of the greatest challenges we face as a species, that we don't believe what's true, we believe what's compelling. And this is a very innate human trait, right? The fact that virtually every single culture throughout history believed in some kind of religion and metaphysical concept, something that didn't have sufficient evidence, but that for whatever reason was compelling enough for them to believe. And then we still see it manifest even in atheist or secular communities, right? You go to LA is pretty godless, but everyone there believes in astrology and shit like that, right? And then, you know, maybe you're an atheist, but your political belief is you believe that to be just some eternal truth that you believe dogmatically. Or we see it now with Epstein, how without sufficient evidence, it's just a compelling story. The masses believe it. And they don't even, it's not that they believe it might be true. They believe it with so much conviction. So there's something very human about this, but it's also problematic. So I guess anybody who cares about helping make the world a better place needs to accept this as like an innate human quality, that we believe stories that are compelling and not necessarily true. So how do we make the truth more compelling, right? That's kind of the key to building a better society. Describe truth in a way that's compelling and easy to understand. And sometimes to do this, you need to dumb it down, right? You need to dumb it down in a way that is compelling, but maybe that's just a more effective way to describe reality to society. So yeah, just some thoughts on that. Kufar says, are we talking about Iran? Simon Whistler repeated the 30-40K figure and said like 4 different sources on a video he made. Is he on YouTube? I'm actually not sure. We could pull up some studies and look through them. There is one. The one study that seems to deploy the best methodology is saying something like 5,000 deaths and another 11,000 unconfirmed. The 40K to 100K, from what I understood, was just debunked. And again, to think that you're going to have hundreds of thousands without like just mass video evidence of massacres and dead people, or like compare that to Gaza. And maybe you don't have the same internet blackout in Gaza, but people in Iran we are seeing things being uploaded. In Gaza, it was every single day we would see videos of dead children, right? The stories we heard was very much corroborated with video evidence, but this is not happening to nearly the same degree, or to any degree in Iran. But if you guys think there's a good video worth reviewing, I'm happy to do it. Yeah, J Master said most of the evidence I've seen is around 6,000 deaths. Exactly. Yeah, that seems to be the most legitimate source, which again is horrific, unjustifiable. And of the 6,000, it's 200. So there was an actual battle. Not many people are talking about this. Of the 6,000, it's 200 members of the Iranian military or police forces. So somehow there was some kind of an armed insurgency. Was this like supported by? Where do they get the weapons? This very well could be Israeli or U.S. intelligence. And what's funny is, if I were to now go on Twitter and say, I think it's very plausible that the Mossad was behind giving these Iranian protesters weapons, people would be like, oh, that's a conspiracy, da, da, da. But if Israel admitted to it, people would say, yeah, look at Israel. Look what they did. That's so cool. Look what they did, right? So Israel does stuff like this, and they admit it, and then people brag about it, like the beepers, right? How much of the pro-Israel camp think the beeper story is just this amazing thing? What a success. But if Israel didn't admit it and people accused Israel, it'd be like, oh, that's anti-Semitic, right? So it's like, guys, we know that the Mossad brags, or Israel brags about how deep the Mossad is working in Israel. So it's not at all conspiratorial or implausible that they were involved in arming protesters, because there was an actual battle, right? A battle to the point where 200 security forces were killed. Yeah. That Tigger says, what's worrying is the last round of negotiations were met with airstrikes, and there's currently a military buildup. Yeah, there's definitely a huge military buildup. Supposedly, there's never been a military buildup this big that hasn't led to military action. But this could also be just to put pressure on them, right? So there's negotiations Thursday. If you really want to pressure Iran to make concessions in their negotiations, the military pressure is certainly going to help. But I would say it's also possible that if the negotiations failed, then it will be met directly with airstrikes. So if anybody's into like prediction markets and poly market, I would say it's safe to bet against an attack until at least this weekend. And then this weekend, I think all bets are off the table, Maybe one day we'll do a stream about prediction markets because that's interesting. There's definitely money-making opportunities there for those who are disciplined and methodical about it. Those who are just gambling are going to lose. But if you're methodical, there's definitely something there. Okay, cool. I don't think I'm going to watch this live, but I'm happy to check this out and do a deeper thing on it. Let's see what else we got here. Oh, so yeah, another thing. I don't know if you all saw. There's been a new death toll list. MOH released a new death toll list for the first time in many months. This one includes 68,000 names. I'm going to put out, I know I've been saying this for a while, that I'm going to do a video analysis and a written analysis on the death toll. I haven't done one in a very long time, but I started working on one and I hope to have it released by next week. It'll be start as a Twitter article, and then I'm going to come on here and do a video analysis of it. Nothing's changed. It just confirms everything we've known. Highest rates of violent fatalities amongst women and children in the 21st century, rates being percentage of hold on. Yeah, highest rates of women and children, rate being what percentage of the child and woman population were killed. Nothing in this new data has changed. There's actually two ways to look at the data, and you could see how bad it is. One is what percent of the child population has been killed, and of those killed, what percent are women and children. If you look at it both those separate ways, Israel is really in a league of its own. Even if you compare it to specific cities like Aleppo and Mosul, Israel is still much higher. Now, Gabriel Epstein, who I consider, I don't know if a friend, but like an acquaintance and even a colleague of sorts, he does death toll analyses. He's pro-Israel. And I've always considered him to be by far the most competent death toll analyst on the pro-Israel side, and also by far the most honest. In terms of his competency, he's not only the most competent on the pro-Israel side, he's maybe the most competent one I know. But his honesty took a major blow this week because he released a new death toll analysis, and he didn't explicitly lie about anything, but he framed something as very vague and up for interpretation. So you may have seen this week a lot of tweets saying Hamas admits mainly men killed or whatever. Like the whole narrative around the death toll this week is based on Gabriel Epstein's analysis, which he doesn't lie. But let me read what he says, and you'll see why it's dishonest. And I called him out on it, both via email and publicly, and he hasn't responded, which is upsetting. He goes, the demographics demonstrate a much higher share of adult men 18 to 59 and older teenage boys relative to their share of the population, and a much lower share of women and children. The share of men and older teenage boys continues to grow over time. 100% true. But if you hear that and you don't have other context, you're like, oh, okay, so the numbers in Gaza are actually good. But the share of men is always higher in armed conflict. But in Gaza, the share of men is much, much, much lower than it is in almost all of the conflicts. So, for example, in Gaza, around 50% are men, not just men of military age, men up to the age 65. In Syria, it was like 75 to 90%, just to give some context. So when you say that without context, you give the completely wrong impression. impression. So it's not an outright lie, but that is a form of dishonesty. And he never went on the record to correct it. So it's very disappointing. Like, you can, why, where are the supporters of Israel that say, you know what, I support Israel, but this is the truth about the death toll? Why don't those people exist? Why is there not a single person who's honest enough to say that? This does point to a huge flaw in the, like, in the pro-Israel movement, in the Zionism, whatever you want to call it. Where are the honest supporters of Israel? Find me one analyst, one social media influencer, one Jewish intellectual who supports Israel, who's being honest about the death toll. Where are they? They don't exist. And Purgadora, good to see you. It's been a while. Thanks for the $5. Looking forward to the updated analysis. Your work has value. Keep doing what you do, Adar. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Jay Master says, even if it's true, it doesn't prove anything. Adult men were disproportionately killed in the Bosnian genocide. For sure, they were disproportionately killed in Rwanda, in Cambodia on October 7th. The share of adult men killed was much higher on October 7th than in Gaza. Let that sink in. So it's not even better than October 7th. It's not. It's, you know. So there's really there's that stat on its own means absolutely nothing. The data. So now everyone's saying, oh, look at the data. Look at the data. Yeah, but that same data tells you the highest rate of fatalities amongst women and children. That's what the data tells you. But they're not. No one's going to admit it. And obviously Eisenberg comes out with yet another lie. Eisenberg, what a preposterous lie. Let's open this. And honestly, I consider Eisenberg to be an enemy of the Jewish people. I do. Because I don't know many people who have done more to misinform the Jewish people than him. The Jewish people are less informed, more likely to spread misinformation, and more likely to engage in atrocity denial because of Eisenberg. It's very hard to know who to trust. There's a lot of misinformation, and Eisenberg presents himself as honest. So the Jewish people are looking for who to trust, and they believe that he's trustworthy. And he's a pathological liar. It's not that he's just a bad analyst. No, he's actually a liar. So look what he posts this thing. Hold on. I'm blocked, so I can't even retweet it. And I'm gonna stop. I don't need to go after Eisenberg like as an individual. I'm gonna just post a better, more honest analysis, and that will be the way I counter him. But it's disappointing. He has harmed the Jewish people more than most Jews have. More than most anti-Semites have. Anti-Semites would wish they could harm the Jewish people as much as Eisenberg has. I'm not going to read this whole thing because it's just low IQ, dishonest bullshit. But look what he says. Rather than contend with this evidence, right? He talks about excess adult men. Rather than contend with this evidence, critics have come up with a new talking point. Men always die more than women in wars, so the pattern proves nothing. Meaning that they claim these excess male deaths are civilians, not combatants, all said without evidence. Okay. What do you mean? What do you mean a new talking point? We've been saying this from the very beginning, A. B, there's literature on this. This is well established that men die at a higher rate. This isn't a new talking point. If you are not accounting for excess civilian male deaths in a death toll analysis, you either don't know what you're doing or you're being dishonest. But he's literally framing doing the right thing as a form of dishonesty. It's a complete inversion of reality. And then he goes on to say, currently, no affirmative evidence is presented that adult males in Gaza have died at a much higher rate than women. That claim is simply assumed by analogy to other dissimilar wars. Okay, no. Here's the evidence. If you look at the death toll from ages 0 to 15 and ages 50 to 80, males are dying at a 50% higher rate than females of the same age in non-combatant ages. What do you mean there's no evidence? Every single age group, males are dying at a higher rate than females. What more evidence do you need? And 50% higher, that's a lot. And we should expect civilians of military age to die at a higher rate than civilian boys and civilian elderly males. So we have tremendous evidence. So to say there's no evidence. Now, Eisenberg's not stupid, but he knows his audience is. He knows they won't question him. And when you actually look at the comments, here's the thing: Eisenberg will block anybody who challenges him. So he's just created this echo chamber where he could lie to the people. The people don't know how to, they're either not critical enough, they don't care enough, or they're not smart enough to understand that he's lying to them. And he's literally built a following by misleading the Jewish people. It's indefensible. My channel says, who's Eisenberg? Someone most anti-Semites wish they could be in terms of harming the Jewish people. Look him up on Twitter. He's the single most dishonest, worst analyst out there. The chat is on YouTube. No, I'm saying you're saying they're always an exercise on how long can I listen to or talk to himself rather than an actual discussion. Well, anyone's invited on. You could raise your hand and join and share your thoughts. But I'm not talking to myself. I'm responding to audience questions. So by default, your framing is a little problematic. How many women in Syria took part in the attacks and fighting? I know Kurdish women do, but who else? But overall, I think it's much larger for Hamas, where you need to be more aware of potential. No, Yuri, that is simply not true. We have zero evidence of female combatants in Gaza. You've had a few terror attacks throughout the years from women, but there's no female combatants in Gaza. There's not a single report of that happening. Not one. No, I'm saying you go, OMG, adore listeners. What do you mean? Is that a critique? Is there something I'm saying that you find incorrect, or does it just make you uncomfortable because you would rather believe the propaganda? Is the truth about the death toll triggering to you, or do you have a legitimate critique? Hop on, raise your hand. Let's bring you on for a stream. What's the critique? Kufar will bring you on.
Sir, I think most people can't see where like the questions are that you're responding to. I don't see any of like the messages on YouTube or Twitter.
Well, if you go to the YouTube live stream, you should see this in the chat section.
The last message I sent was by JMasters7515, and he said, if it's true, it doesn't really prove anything, as old men were disproportionately killed in the Bosnian genocide.
Oh, that's you. Cool. Yeah, that's the second to last comment. There's been one since.
But you're sure it's on YouTube?
Oh, what I just read? Oh, you're saying I didn't do a...
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I did a screen share on YouTube. You're talking about the thread I just read. Okay, I misunderstood you. Hold on. Yeah. I'll drop a link on Discord. No, you could just raise your hand here on Discord, and then you can come on and share your thoughts.
Like, who brought up the Eisenberg thing, though? Because I think everyone's a bit confused, because like they think you're just talking to like ghosts on the internet. I don't think they know like what you're responding to.
Oh, you're saying I brought up Eisenberg with like not enough context? It wasn't clear why I brought him up?
Yeah.
Okay. I hear that. I would need to recall. And I mean, we were talking about the death toll, and I said, oh, and Eisenberg. Maybe I just assumed everybody would know who Eisenberg is, but it's just because he is one of the leading pro-Israel death toll analysts. In fact, he's the most cited death toll analysts. So I just, I brought him up because I figured people know. But if that wasn't clear to the viewers, just so you know, that's who Eisenberg is. He does death toll analyses, and he's the most dishonest. As you can see, I have no problem giving people credit, even if I disagree with them. Like Gabriel Epstein, highly competent. In fact, Gabriel Epstein, I have respect for him because of his competency. I lost a lot of respect for him this week, but Gabriel's given me feedback that has helped inform my position on Gaza. He's helped me refine my position. I truly respect honest and intelligent people. So I still view him as highly competent, and I respect that. I lost a lot of respect for him because of his dishonesty this week, but Epstein is kind of dishonest by just leaving it vague enough and up for interpretation, not coming on the record to correct people misusing his analysis to reach their own conclusions. But Eisenberg straight up lies. He straight up lies. At least a few dozen times in the past 2 years have I seen him. Actually, I'll say at least a dozen times in the past 2 years have I seen him say things that are just blatantly false, and he'll never correct them. And if anybody questions him on it, then he'll just block. But yeah, that I dropped the thing. You could give him a follow. It'll do nothing but make you less informed. But yeah, check him out. Anything else?
Are you streaming anywhere else?
Yeah, this is on Twitter and on Twitch, but no one. I get. There's like one viewer on Twitch every time. I've never promoted the Twitch channel. There's just an option on StreamYard. You click Twitch and then boop goes to Twitch. What up, our one viewer on Twitch? Good to see you.
Hang on.
But why are you asking? What's the relevance?
Yeah, I was just confused because like you were reading some comments and like I don't think anyone in this Discord could figure out where the comments were coming from.
For whatever reason, I have a feeling you're a little bit more concerned and confused about this than most, because I have not deviated from what I do in the regular streams. Regular streams, I have Discord here, I have YouTube open, and I go between Discord and YouTube comments. But just so you know, that's what I'm doing. It's between YouTube and Discord. Sometimes I go to Twitter, but if it will help you, I'm happy to say this comment is coming from X. Would you like me to do that? Like explain where it's coming from? Okay, cool. And Peach has joined the stream. Anything else you want to share, Kufar? Or should we let Noam on? Should we bring Noam on?
Let him on.
Okay. Thanks for hopping on. Noam, you want to join? No? Okay. Oh, well, Kufar, you're welcome to share more and say something if you'd like to.
Sorry, could you share your Twitch channel? Because I couldn't find it from your Twitter or from your like YouTube.
Yeah, sure. I don't really like. You guys know, like, I'm not like one of those streamers, not yet at least, but I'm like a streamer hobbyist currently. It's just my name though. But let me send a link. Do I even have any followers on Twitch? One viewer. Let's go, one viewer. Move it up in the world. One viewer. Oh, 8 followers. Check that out. How do people even grow their Twitch? And what even is the benefit? Like YouTube, I feel like, I don't know, maybe someone can make the case. Maybe somebody convinced me to take Twitch more seriously. But there's my Twitch. Wow, that photo needs to change. That's 8 years ago. 9 years ago? 8 years ago. Okay. I think I look pretty much the same, right, guys? Pretty much. Mm-hmm. All right, where did the screen go? My channel says, I'll go spam you on Twitch if that makes you feel better. I really don't care. But if you have Twitch friends, you could share with your Twitch friends. Noam, what's up? I want to hear your critique. Where you at, buddy? No, he left, though. Oh, he says, I'm at work. Keep getting calls. Sure. Always so easy to just leave a nothing burger remark. Oh my God, listen to yourself, and then have nothing of substance. But we'll give Noah more of an opportunity. Maybe he'll come back. We'll come back. Is that right, Yuri? To be fair, you don't need to grow Twitch by that much. Even 200 regular viewers there is a full-time job. Interesting. Is that really how much you need to be able to do it full-time? Huh. I've considered streaming near full-time. I really like streaming, but I don't know. I think it would lose the fun if I had to do it that much, you know? Like if I was trying to rely on it for livelihood, I think it might lose some of its fun. But maybe I'll test it out at some point when I'm less busy. I do have a lot going on. But Head On is progressing nicely. And next week we should have the platform ready for testing. So next week we'll do a live stream from the Head On platform. Yeah, so what do we have coming up? So I will do a stream from the Head On platform. I'm going to release the Gaza death toll analysis, and we're going to do something on Jeffrey Epstein. And honestly, the thing about Jeffrey Epstein, part of me says, why am I even doing this? There's certain things that even if you believe they're true, in talking about them, you put yourself, it's like net negative for like your reputation, how people feel about you. I'll give you like one example, Bibbas, right? And those who know me know at this point that I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I put out an analysis that October 7th was not an inside job. I don't believe Epstein was running a blackmail operation, but I do believe Bibbas was killed in an airstrike because that matches, that fits the kind of conspiracy that is plausible and easy to pull off. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy realist. People conspire. Governments, institutions, people come together and sometimes are dishonest. It's all a matter of identifying when this happens. But it's very possible that the Bibbas analysis was net negative, not for society, but for me personally, right? I'm already talking about controversial stuff, and it just gave people who don't like me something against me, right? People, call me a conspiracy theorist and use it against me. I think it was very triggering for people. So it caused people who may have trusted me to trust me less. How much good did it do for the world? I'm happy I got to counter what I believe to be a blatant Israeli lie on something important. But in terms of for my own personal gain, it was very likely net negative. And it's very likely that doing this thing on Epstein will yield similar results, because anybody who tries to provide clarity on Epstein, they're like, oh, just another Jew protecting Epstein, or oh, it's another pedo protecting him, right? Is it worth it? I don't know, but I care about truth. King of Jace. I mean, there's no evidence they were killed in an airstrike. I'll give a very high level where this assessment comes from. First of all, most conspiracies that people believe in are just way too complex and require way too many people to be involved, that it just wouldn't work. The hypothesis isn't sound. When it comes to this, it would only require no more than 5 people to know about it. It wouldn't require many people to need to keep a secret. But the first way to look at it is simply just probability. So we know that Israel had a policy of attacking the homes of hostage takers after October 7th, even if they had intel that the hostages might be there. So we know that Israel killed some number of hostages. Israel admitted already to killing 12 hostages, but we have reason to believe that they killed a bit more. The single most popular testimony from hostages that got released was they were constantly terrified of being killed in airstrikes, and a few of them were injured in airstrikes. So some of the living hostages almost died because of airstrikes. Israel had a policy of blowing up the homes of hostage takers. So the chance of a hostage dying in an airstrike is high. The amount of times Palestinian or even Islamic militants have killed children with their bare hands is close to non-existent. It almost has never happened. In the whole history of the Israel-Palestine conflict, there's only been 2 babies that we know have been killed intentionally by Palestinian militants. Actually, one was a Lebanese militant, and he doesn't admit to doing it intentionally. So there are 2. So just in terms of probability, the airstrike is much more likely. But as time's passed, it's become much more plausible. There's claim of this autopsy, but no one's confirmed that. Israeli forensics never confirmed what Daniel Hagari and Netanyahu said. And both Daniel Hagari and Netanyahu, this was their language, they said, based on intelligence findings and the forensics identification process. They always mentioned intelligence almost to give plausible deniability to forensics. What's the relevance of mentioning intelligence when it comes to knowing that they were killed with their bare hands? Intelligence doesn't matter. What did the autopsy say? But every time they talked about it, they said intelligence. That's 1. 2, Israeli forensics never confirmed it. But if you have an autopsy showing children strangled with their bare hands and then doing horrible things to the body like they're claiming, show it to somebody. There's dozens of human rights organizations that could confirm that. There's thousands of forensics departments that could confirm that. Not even Israeli allies in the West confirmed that. Nobody saw this autopsy. Not a single person saw this autopsy and confirmed that it even exists. So everything about this story just screams conspiracy. So yeah, sometimes Israel lies. We know this. They've been caught in dozens of lies. Imagine how many lies they haven't been caught in. So this is one of those things that seems to be a lie that Israel, for the most part, got away with, but some people believe them to be lying. King of Jays. Yeah. I mean, sure. This is a analysis based on speculation, but what are our options? Take Israel's word for it, or speculate based on available evidence. If you believe Israel blindly, you're constantly going to be led to the wrong conclusion. I'm not gonna. My epistemological framework is not if Israel says something, therefore I believe it. That's retarded. Why would anybody reach a conclusion that way? So yeah, I reach conclusions based on available evidence and probabilities. That's the smart thing to do. If you want, you could say, you know what, I just don't know what happened. Fine, I could accept that. But to say, yeah, I know they were killed by their bare hands because Israel said so, but they never showed the autopsy to anybody and Israel forensics never confirmed it. If that's how you want to understand what's true, go for it. You'll be constantly led to the wrong conclusion. You go, no, I'm pretty sure they were examined by a forensics team. No, their bodies were identified by a forensics team, but the Israeli forensics department never said this was their cause of death. Never. You could look in it. I did my research into this. I see, King of Jace, how triggered you are. But you see, you're not triggered by the high possibility that Israel killed the Bibbas family and lied about it, right? That's no good. You just want to lick the boot, and what they say goes. And anybody who dares question it, even on like very good grounds, you get triggered. Okay, we have different epistemological frameworks. But I can assure you, if that's the way you're going to reach conclusions, you're constantly going to be led to the wrong conclusion. Constantly, nonstop. But yeah, I'm definitely not a conspiracy theorist. Most conspiracies are bullshit, but some are, some are true. Conspiracy realism, that's what we should strive to be. Conspiracy realists. Ophir, yeah, you bring up a good point. The Bibbas were held by a smaller non-Islam. No. They were an Islamic organization, debatably more Islamic than Hamas. The data is not saying Hamas has no record of killing children with their bare hands. It's Islamic terror organizations have. If you look at the long history of Islamic terror attacks, and there's a lot, they almost never target small children, and it's against Islamic doctrine, right? They'll target teenagers because according to Islam, once you go through puberty, you're an adult. But like young children are holy. They're considered, and there's some Muslims here, maybe they could confirm this, but if you're a child, you're considered holy, you're considered Muslim. Look at all the history of Islamic terror attacks. Very, very, very rarely are young children targeted. And it's not only in Islamic terror attacks. I mean, babies are generally spared. It's very, very rare to kill a baby with your bare hands. It happens, but it's much more likely to die in an airstrike. And again, I think the greatest proof at this point is Israel has tremendous interest in winning the PR war. If there's an autopsy showing strangulation with bare hands, they would show it to somebody. They would send it to the UN. They would send it to human rights organizations. It's not that Israel sends reports to the UN. They took hostage testimonies and sent it to the UN. They have a process of sending stuff to the UN to get the UN to confirm it. They do this. They didn't with the autopsy. An autopsy is better evidence than a hostage testimony. It's an autopsy. None of it. They even said, we're going to confirm this with our allies in the West. They didn't do that. And that wouldn't even mean much because allies in the West, that's not the best evidence. But thousands of independent forensics departments around the world could have looked at it and be like, yeah, the autopsy checks out. Nothing. Why? It's so easy. Why? Anyways, we could move on. I don't talk much about Bibbas anymore because to me, it's not the most important. I was just bringing it up, something that I believe to be true, and it was probably net negative for my reputation and how people feel about me. And it's very possible talking about countering the Epstein conspiracies will be the same, but I'm probably going to put something out anyways. King of Juice, you're bringing up something completely different. You're saying the forensics in Abu Kabir did say, no, for sure. Forensics did confirm some hostages were killed in an airstrike, but none of these were nearly as politicized and important as Bibbas. Bibbas was in a league of its own. Why do you think that there were, was it 40 or 50 hostages killed in Gaza? For none of them did Daniel Hagari or Netanyahu go on the record and give their cause of death, because people didn't care. It was just assumed Hamas killed them. They did have to admit that some of the families wanted autopsies, and they admitted that there were airstrikes. They never did a press conference saying Hamas executed these people or these people were killed in an airstrike. Only with Bibbas, because the world was waiting to hear. And people wanted to know what happened to Bibbas, what happened. The Bibbas family were in the center of media attention. They couldn't have just said, oh, they died in captivity without giving an explanation. The world wanted an explanation. So they got an explanation. And you know what's interesting? I'm even, most Israelis are more conspiratorial than me. Israelis are quite conspiratorial. I've been meeting up like right-wing Israelis who believe October 7th was an inside job. And when I tell Israelis about Bibbas, I don't talk about much. When I tell them about it, they're convinced pretty quickly. They're like, okay, fine, it makes sense. Shatter just the Bibbas family sent a cease and desist order demanding they don't disclose details. No, this was prior to them getting the information. Said until we get the full story, we asked not to talk about it. But then not Kfir, sorry, what the father, what's his name? Yarden. He went on 60 Minutes, so clearly he's okay to talk about it. But even he didn't say I saw an autopsy, you know. How many would people know if Israel lied, trying to figure out? Right, but so that's kind of how I assess conspiracies, right? Like the reason we could know October 7th was almost certainly not an inside job. First of all, what's the hypothesis? Like Netanyahu has always been one to maintain the status quo and want to play it safe. He doesn't want this on his reputation. He doesn't want to need to like be in a situation where he needs to completely reconstruct Gaza and just take this massive blow to his reputation, even if he's callous enough to let his own people die. But let's say he did. Let's say Netanyahu's like, you know what? I want to let my own people die, so I have a justification to do whatever in Gaza. Okay, let's say. Then what? He tells the general to let it happen. The general lets the next in line, and they let the next in line. The amount of the chain of commands, the amount of people who would need to be in on this is way too many to agree. There's very few Israelis that are going to allow their own people to be killed for political purposes. Highly implausible. And a lot of the things that people think are conspiratorial about it, like, oh, but so why did they move the 2 battalions to the West Bank a week before? We're thinking about it the wrong way. The attack happened because there weren't many battalions. It's not that the battalions moved in order so they could, in order for the attack to happen. The attack happened because the battalions moved, right? Can you explain the details of Hamas using human shields? I think you've said that strategy by Hamas is exaggerated by Israeli defenders. Yeah, I mean, it depends what you mean by human shields. So there's like this caricature people, and like Douglas Murray said this in the debate with Dave Smith. He's like, we have stories of Hamas popping out behind families and shooting IDF soldiers. Like that's not true. We don't have stories, and we don't have evidence of this. Or this idea of like launching these attacks from behind families or from high rises with families in them, that is simply not supported by the evidence. What you do have is a vast tunnel city under Gaza where Hamas is existing and operating from. Some of those tunnels are coming out from civilian buildings or from areas near civilian buildings, and then the civilians are living on top. So it makes it very hard for Israel to hit Hamas without killing civilians, unless Israel does proper evacuations, which we know were not done. So to that degree, if you want to say that's human shielding, to that degree, they're certainly human shielding. To the degree where they're like launching attacks from civilian buildings with civilians in it, that's just not backed by the evidence. The best evidence we actually have of them trying, when there was going to be the attack on Gaza City, this was the first time I think we saw something like this. Hamas put out a notice to not evacuate. So that was actually the clearest example of human shielding, when they asked their people not to evacuate from Gaza City. So yeah, it depends what you consider. But in terms of like hiding behind somebody and shooting, that we're not seeing. In fact, there's more proof of Israel doing that with Gazans than vice versa, right? We know Israel, the IDF has taken Gazans and sent them into different booby trap buildings and used various human shields. So it really depends how you define it. Yeah. And if you look at the civilian infrastructure that is being used by Hamas, it's empty buildings and stuff. Like when they say, "Oh, look, we found weapons in schools." I mean, these are schools that there's not a school session. There's not kids in the school. These are areas that have been evacuated. The school is already like damaged, and then they use the infrastructure. That's generally what we're seeing. And if we're seeing attacks happening from civilian buildings with civilians in it, or from schools with children in it, show me a video. Show me proof of that. I've been challenging people to give me proof of this for years now. No one's provided it. So that's just one of those things that people say and widely believe. Yeah, exactly. You're saying there's widespread reporting of Israel using. Yeah, there is widespread reporting of human shielding. But yeah, so but it's what Hamas is doing is not different from what many other guerrilla groups have done. You know, like operating from civilian areas is how guerrilla groups get some advantage over a much more powerful military. In fact, you could argue that Hamas has separated themselves to a much higher degree from civilians because they built tunnels, right? Like they're separated by like 20 feet of concrete from civilians. It still makes it very hard for Israel to hit them without hitting civilians, but they're not in like Mosul, Fallujah, Aleppo. The rebel forces or militants there were embedded much more within civilian infrastructure because they didn't have a tunnel city. So to a certain degree, Hamas is more separated from the civilian population from most other instances of like urban warfare insurgency. But again, it's that separation. It's not like it allows Israel to do much. Israel would still need to evacuate. Shervin, my brother, I've been thinking about you. Good to see you. Where have you been? Yeah, I've been traveling the past month. Where was I? I was in Rome. I was in Miami. I was in Mexico, New York. I don't know if y'all saw my conversation with Noam Dorman. I thought we had an excellent conversation. Thought it was one of the best conversations I've had on the conflict. So if anyone go to Noam's page and look it up, it was cool. I'm gonna have him on the channel soon. And then I came back to Israel for a week, and then I went to Berlin. I went to Berlin and some small town in Germany for 10 days, and now I'm back. So good to see you, Shervin. We should definitely catch up. Even their Gun Lehi use those types of tactics against the British. Yeah, I mean, look, any like guerrilla warfare. The whole idea is we are fighting somebody who who has a military. We don't. We're going to take any advantage we can get. I mean, the Bar Kokhba revolt. They used tunnels, right? The American Revolution. They used dirty tactics. That's pretty consistent. Hamas is not really unique in that regard. What's unique is how it's framed that it's unique, right? Like we've seen this happen for thousands of years, weaker entities using such tactics to gain an advantage. But the way it's framed when Hamas does it is unique. It's framed as different and more evil and unprecedented, but it's not unprecedented. We've seen many people do this before them. And again, the solution is just proper evacuations, you know? If you want to bomb Gaza, if you want to bomb tunnels and there's people between the tunnel and the bomb, you need to get the people out of there. King of Jace. Yeah, Muhammad Dave was hiding in a tent in Alma. Well, we don't know if he was hiding in a tent or if he was visiting a family, but he was in a tent in a safe zone for sure. And that's why that's why a safe zone within Gaza doesn't make sense, right? So Israel can't say this is a safe zone and then bomb it if Hamas goes there, because it's not a safe zone. So you need to take them out of Gaza, or you need to say, okay, if they're in a safe zone, then we just won't hit no matter what. So there's no true safe zone within Gaza. You need to remove Gazans out of Gaza. But yeah, Mohammed Daif was in a tent in a safe zone. Wait, what do you mean you're nuts, King Jace? What about that did you not like? What about that did you not like? That I said we don't know if he was visiting family or hiding. That's the honest way to frame it. The fact that you just concluded that that was his hiding spot is that's your own bias. I'm open to the fact that it was his hiding spot, but it probably wasn't, because he's much more vulnerable. Why do you think one of the top Hamas, the leader of the Hamas military wing, is going to hide above ground? What you're saying makes less sense than what I'm potentially suggesting. Being in a tunnel is much safer than being above ground. So he was above ground for some amount of time, but to think that that's where he was staying for weeks at a time, amongst people who may give intel to Israel, where it's very easy to just hit you with an airstrike, no. It's very likely he was going in between. Who knows what he was doing there? But to think that that's where he was there for many weeks, probably not. Probably not. He could have hid in a tunnel in a rural area. He knew it. Yeah. This isn't exonerating Mohammed Daif. Look, Mohammed Daif going there, he put his family in danger for sure. This isn't a defense of his. Like, why do you think trying to describe the situation accurately is a defense of Hamas? Like, we should be able to speak honestly without it being framed as, oh, that's a defense. For example, if someone describes Hamas in a way that is inaccurate, you're hyperbolically or exaggerating about Hamas. Setting the record straight is not a defense of Hamas, it's a defense of truth. And I'll always defend truth. So you should understand that distinction. And yes, there is often, as bad as Hamas is, there's often claims about them that are just exaggerated or untrue. And same with Israel. For example, we often hear, just as much as there's propaganda about the death toll being low or the civilian to combatant ratio being low, despite all evidence telling us otherwise, we hear another absurd claim about the 600,000 killed. That's also bullshit. And I've called it out as bullshit. And you know what some in the pro-Palestine camp said? Oh, you're defending Israel. No, I'm not. I'm defending truth. So in a sense, you're in their camp. Those same pro-Pallies that said, I'm defending Israel by saying the 600K claim is false. That's essentially what you're doing. No. Okay, Jace, I understand what camp you're in. The ratio is low. No. The civilian to combatant ratio. No. Okay, I get what camp. You're one of those Eisenberg guys. I've analyzed this exhaustively. I'm not going to get into now. I'm releasing a new analysis next week. The data is available for public scrutiny. The civilian combatant ratio is the highest in the 21st century. The rate of violent fatalities amongst women and children is the highest in the 21st century. In fact, I could literally send you the list right now. We have the data. It's publicly available. I'll send you the link. Look at the amount of children killed. Compare that to Aleppo. The rate at which children were killed in Aleppo is twice as high as in Gaza. No, I've looked at Aleppo. The rate at which children were killed in Gaza is twice as high as Aleppo. Aleppo was horrible, but not as bad as Gaza. All right, King of Jace, come debate it. Come join me for a stream. I've literally studied this. Let's talk through the numbers. How many children were killed in Aleppo? Do you know? Do you know? Whatever. It's not like I expected much. Pretty much everything you said has been based on just like believing the pro-Israel narrative. I already know you're one of those guys who reads an Eisenberg narrative analysis and thinks that it's true. You've been duped by a pathological liar. Holy shit. That's hilarious. I have the list right here. I literally have the list of every single dead person. We can compare it to Aleppo. The rate at which children were killed in Aleppo is less than half of in Gaza. Same with women. Gaza is a league of its own. If you want to find an instance of violence that is worse in terms of rate of dead women and children, you need to go to the Rwanda genocide. Now, Rwanda was much worse, but there's nothing in the 21st century that's this bad in terms of violent fatalities. And again, you can prove me wrong. Anybody can prove me wrong. For 2 years now, 2 years, I've been inviting people to come debate this. 2 years. This is the only topic, right? You could look at my channel. I've had debates on all sorts of things. I've debated the Jewish question with anti-Semites. I've debated anti-Zionists, Kahanists, all sorts of people. The one topic nobody's willing to debate is the death toll. You want to know why? Because either you haven't reviewed the data and you're not comfortable debating it. Understandable. You shouldn't debate something you don't understand. Or you reviewed the data and you understand there's nothing to debate. Nothing. So King of Jace, what is your, based on what do you say it's less than Aleppo? Like, make your case. Why don't you join me on stream? You'll be the first in 2 years willing to debate this. Everyone else is a coward. You want to join? I'll send you a link. No, you don't want to? You're scared? You like hiding behind your screen, spreading misinformation? What are the numbers? Tell me, present it. I will read it out loud. I am very happy to be proven wrong. I will admit I'm wrong. What are the numbers in Aleppo? What are the numbers in Gaza? Show me that it's worse. I was rereading about Aleppo just today. Oh, you see, he says it's pointless. That's always what they say. That the numbers in Gaza are low. They get called out. I say, come challenge me. They say, no, it's pointless. Why is it pointless? Okay, you could write a Substack debunking me. Do it. I'd love that. Do it. You say these debates are like a Jerry Springer game show, but that's not true. You could see the many debates I've had. I always give the person coming on way more speaking time than I have. I don't cut people off. That's just not true. In fact, there's one viewer who, whenever I have a debate, he comments, he's like, Adar, you keep getting steamrolled in these debates, which is a weird comment. And somebody's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, whenever I fast forward, it's always the other person talking. You don't say anything. Well, yeah, because when I have a guest, I let them speak. But King of Jace, let's hear it. Let's hear the numbers. How many children were killed in Gaza? What percent of the population is that comprised of? How many children were killed in Aleppo? What percent of the population is that comprised of? I mean, it's only 4 numbers. Why can't you produce it? Go use an LLM right now. Pull up the numbers. Come on, my guy. You have all the tools at your hand. Pull it up. And Aleppo was widely considered to be a humanitarian disaster. Gaza is much worse. I mean, this is just not even debatable, and that's why no one's willing to debate it. That's why you'll make a claim in anonymity, but you'll never come on and debate it. Just a bunch of cowards engaging in atrocity denialism. And if you're Jewish, you should actually be ashamed of yourself, because we Jews should be more sensitive to atrocity denial because we've experienced it ourselves. We've experienced many atrocities, and we know what it feels like when people deny our atrocities. And now we're committing an atrocity, and we're denying it. It's really shameful. So you want to, okay, so I gave Jace every opportunity to make the case, and you want to hear his response? You are a delusional liberal elitist that romanticizes fanatical underdogs for being the underdog's sake. So a personal attack. Okay, I give you the opportunity to present data to disprove me, and then all you have is a personal attack. Okay, we're moving on. This is not. It's sometimes fun to engage with these like low IQ trolls, but I mean, come on. There's only so much airtime we could give somebody who's not good faith. And if you change your mind, or if you write a Substack, send that over. Happy to review it on stream. Kufar, bringing you back on.
Sorry about that. I was going to say, in terms of the civilian to like combatant fatality ratio, there is an argument that Chechnya is worse. Like we've seen numbers that say that like 250,000 Chechens were killed in that conflict. I believe like the high estimates for Chechen combatants is somewhere around like 14,000.
Yeah, but first of all, are you talking about the first Chechen or second?
Both.
Okay.
Like put together.
Put together. Well, I reviewed 21st century data, right? So that's only referring to the second, but the second is not those numbers. Also, we need to be careful. And I'm happy to do a public review of this if you want, and you can send me a link, I'll review it. But whenever there is a violence committed by a nation that is anti-West, the Western sources on it are generally highly inflated. And then if you look at the sources and you go deeper, you'll see it's a fair bit smaller. We saw this happen in Syria. We're seeing it happen now in Iran. We see it happen with Russia and Ukraine. There was mass killing in all of these, but the numbers are generally less than like what the mainstream West narrative is. But I'm happy to do a review of it. You want? But again, I reviewed 21st century data, so I know that the 20th century Chechnya war was the worst one. But I also I saw this, and this is from somebody I trust, but who knows? It's possible he was wrong. He said he looked into Chechnya, and the Western claim is highly inflated. But you can send me a link. I'm happy to review it. Rabbi Tyrone. Is that real? Rabbi Tyrone? Are you a rabbi in Eugenia Tyrone? If yes, that's awesome. And if that's just like a trolling name, I think it's cool nonetheless. But what's up, Rabbi Tyrone? You go, what is the relationship between homosexuals and liberals? We've seen it manifest through BLM movement and other avenues. Well, I mean, I just think that, liberals have traditionally more tolerant towards homosexuality. So, the LGBTQ movement is going to be liberal. But I'm like, is that what you're asking? Or like, I don't even think, are gay men more liberal than straight men on average? I don't know what the data there shows. Okay. Like, are you saying like, what is the correlation between being a homosexual and being liberal? Maybe they're just liberal because they're more accepted by the liberals. Because a lot of politics is not by having like a deep principled view. It's just your tribe, right? We're more tribal than we are principled, by a lot. So if there's one political movement that's more accepting of your people, you're more likely going to identify them. So I'd say that's probably the connection. It's just some tribal connection because you're accepted by them. King of Jace, I hope you're looking through the data to prove me wrong. Still waiting for you to post those numbers. But yeah, you want to send me something, Kufar?
I'm working on that right now.
Okay.
I think there's more sources than these three that I just sent in the chat, but yeah, like I see the 200,000 civilian fatality figure quite a bit, or combined fatality figure quite a bit.
Combined from both of them, yeah. But what's the? Do you know the difference? But do you know the difference between the first and the second one?
Yeah, I understand. One happened in 95 to like 90.
No, but do you know
94, 95?
Do you have the breakdown in the numbers? Whatever.
No, I don't.
I give you my word. I'm gonna look at this. And if Chechnya is close to Gaza, then I'm happy to go on the record and say so. But in terms of 21st century Chechnya, it wasn't close. It's possible that 20th century Chechnya was. So yeah, my word that I will look into this. Let's see, it's saying 30. Whatever. Out
of curiosity, what numbers are you going off of for like the ratio in Chechnya?
Oh, I would need to look back. What I did was about 18 months ago. I just looked. I had I produced a list of all the worst like instances of violence in the 21st century, and one by one I just looked into them, and I just logged what the estimated ratio was, and I don't think I saw any that was like over like 3-to-1 or maybe 4-to-1 was the most. Most of them were in the 1-to-1, 2-to-1 range. So I was able to log that, based on every single one in the 21st century, we haven't found anything that was more than 4-to-1, and Gaza seems to be 4 to 9-to-1, or 5 to 9-to-1. Does that make sense?
As in 5 civilians for like every 5 civilians for every militant?
Yeah. So like 80 to 90%.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. But if you want, I could. So yeah, it was like 18 months ago. But the purpose was not to have like the memory of what every conflict was, right? I don't have the capacity to remember, or that's not important. For me, it was just important to understand how this stacks up to other 21st century conflicts, right? So when you look one by one, you see how they stacks up, and they were all quite a bit lower. Even Iraq, which was like really bad, was 2-1, 2.5-1. Vietnam wasn't even 4-1. World War
It was lower in Vietnam and Korea in World War II. It was like 3-1, 2-1.
Yeah, exactly. And also World War I was something like 2-1, right? Like all of these are low. Yeah. You see King of Jace, like this has just been debunked. Hamas claims 72,000 dead. Israel says 25,000 combatant deads. Yes, but we have the names and ID numbers, date of births of all of them dead. There's not enough excess males for there to be 25,000 combatants on the list. There's you could see the population pyramid of those killed. You see the excess male deaths. You could get an estimate of how many combatants are. There's not 25,000 combatants on the list. If 25,000 combatants are on the list, tens of thousands of them are not included. We don't know their names. We don't know where they are. We also have reason to believe Israel is inflating the number, both because they have an incentive to, but we've heard from multiple IDF whistleblowers that the IDF shoots people in no-go zones, many of them unarmed, and they just list them to be combatants. We know the 25K is inflated, but there's also not 25 excess male deaths on the list. When you look at the demographics of those killed, a reasonable estimate of combatants would be around 15% of the list, which is something like, wait, it's always hard for me to do mental math this hour when I'm live streaming. 10% would be, yeah, so it'd be like 12,000, right? There could be 12,000 combatants on the list. The other 13,000 either, it's not a complete list. There's still people missing. So there are combatants not on the list. There are civilians not on the list. But are there 13,000 combatants not on the list? Perhaps. But you can't do 72,000 minus 25,000. That's like the most dishonest thing the analysts are doing. It makes no sense. The demographics don't allow for that to happen. King of JC say you have no proof. No proof of what exactly? I know this has been a tough conversation for you because you're hearing a lot of these things for the first time. Like I know how it feels to be indoctrinated and have like this worldview where you think it's one way and then you just get hit by like irrefutable proof that it's something else. So yeah, you need to unlearn, and you need to, potentially recreate your worldview based on new information. This is if you're open-minded, right? Most people will just like stick their head in the sand and be like, nope, I refuse to accept it. You reduce 25,000 from 72,000. That's most people would just put their head in the sand. But if you're open-minded and intellectually honest, maybe you'll update your position based on this.
Sorry. Hello.
Yeah. Wait, but
the Chechen.
Hold on.
Sorry.
King of J. You have no proofs. You went through every single 72 games on the list manually. No, you don't need to go through the list manually, my guy. You have spreadsheets. You could automate this shit. You could see how many are in each. I'll show this chart one more time, and then Kufar, I'll let you speak, okay? But yeah. So honestly, it's my pride that makes me still engage with just like unintelligent bullshit. King of JC, if I actually believed you would change your mind, it might be worth engaging more. But now I'm just doing it for my own pride, honestly. So I'm acknowledging a flaw in my own personality by engaging with you. Hold on. Here you go. Here's all the deaths. Here's the deaths on a population pyramid. You don't need to go one by one. We have the data. It's on a spreadsheet. I could send it to you. You could analyze it yourself. But the fact that you don't know this and you're still so confident shows that you're too confident without good reason. Okay, so here we have females. Here we have males. We see that males of all ages are dying at a higher rate. Male babies, male grandfathers, because this happens in all war. So this red line establishes if men were to die at the same rate as women, that's this red line. Everything over the red line is excess male deaths. Now, what the dishonest people are doing, like Eisenberg and others, they're saying, oh, okay, all of these are combatants. Now, if you'd say all of these are combatants, even this isn't 25,000, right? 25,000 would literally, oh, sorry. I just realized I'm not screen sharing. Sorry, guys. Here we go. The red line, right? This is the equalizer. Everything over the red line, these are excess. So what people are dishonestly doing, if you take 25,000, you literally are like cutting all this off, and you're telling me that females are dying at a higher rate than civilian males, which is not true of any conflict. Civilian males always die at a higher rate of conflict. Now, how do you know all these over the red line? How do you know who here is a combatant? Some would say, and this is intuitive, you're like, okay, well, everything over the red line should be a combatant, but that's not true, because we see males of all ages are dying at a higher rate. They die at a higher rate because they have different behaviors. They're more likely to leave their home, get food, water, and aid. They are more likely to be confused as being combatants. And they're more likely to work in dangerous positions like first responders and journalists. So the way to establish a baseline to try to understand how many of the military ages are males or are combatants, you look at what is the excess males of non-combatant ages. And you have, of all ages that are not combatant ages, males are dying at a 50% higher rate than females. So this yellow line is 50% higher than this red line. That's the baseline we establish. So you can assume everything over the yellow line is combatants. But even that would be an overestimate, because civilian men of combatant ages are going to die at a higher rate than civilian boys and civilian elderly, because civilian males of military ages are the most likely to be confused as combatants, the most likely to work in dangerous positions, and the most likely to take risks. So maybe 15% of this list are combatants, not more. Likely not more, potentially less. But to think you could just reduce 25,000 combatants for this list, it's a joke. It's a big fucking joke. Anybody who's looked at the data honestly will not reach that conclusion. So we just need to, the narrative is bullshit. We need to stop saying this. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, combatants could be.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So we pulled like a Russian human rights group that cited the 20,000 fatalities for like both wars combined. I'm gonna take like the maximalist claims from Russia in terms of how many Chechen combatants they killed. So the Russians claim they killed 22,000 Chechens in the second Chechen war, and they claim their maximalist claim of how many they killed in the first war was like 15,000. At least that's what the numbers I'm getting off Wiki are. So if you add that up, that's 37,000, right? 37,000 Chechen fatalities of combatants. You compare the ratio of like 37,000 to 200,000, and you get like a ratio of around 5.4 to 1. But this is assuming that like the Russian claims are of how many Chechen combatants they killed is accurate.
Well, we're assuming two things. First of all, we're still using 20th century and 21st century data sets, but I'm not the 200,000 number. I'm contesting. I think that's highly. I
understand.
I think it's highly exaggerated.
But Andrew posted like the sources. I'll post another.
Yeah. Send me all the links you think are relevant. I will read them, and then I will come back and I will present this. And if
in your DMs, or
you could send it to me
in the chat.
You could send it to me on Discord. You send me, or in the chat, whatever. I'll look at it. Emperor Sing is king, just a display of Dunn-Kruger. Possibly. I mean, people don't like to change their views, you know. Like imagine this: for 2 years you've believed lowest to civilian to combatant ratio in history. Like imagine that you've genuinely believed this for 2 years, and then suddenly some guy you don't really know so well is saying no, it's actually the highest. Like that's a tough pill to swallow. So on what basis am I contesting it? Oh, no, well, just based on somebody who I trust deeply, who is a researcher who did a deep dive into Chechnya and said it's highly exaggerated. Again, I admit that he could actually be wrong, but he looked at the 20th century data, and this was the conclusion he came to. But again, if Chechnya is close to Gaza, I have no problem saying that. What do you think? If Chechnya is as bad as Gaza, somehow that's exonerating. Again, Aleppo, I think, is it's a modern example that was widely considered to be a humanitarian disaster. That's twice as bad in terms of children killed. So yeah. Yeah, you're saying Mosul. No, Mosul was not nearly as bad as Gaza. Neither was Aleppo. No, this is just John Spencer lies. Again, the funny thing, King of Jason, I've given you so much opportunity to come on stream and make the case, or share a single data. At least like Kufar is coming with links, you know? At least he's coming with links. Okay, cool. Thanks. I will review these. I will review these Kufar and I'll get back to you. But let's hold on. Let's even assume. Okay, let's just for the sake of the argument. Let's say Chechnya is as bad, right? Then that was a horrific massacre, mass murder. Okay, so that's as bad as Gaza, the mass murder of civilians. Like what? Cool. Okay, yeah, we're gonna stop. We're gonna stop engaging with Jace because he hasn't produced a single original thought. It's just claims that he refuses to back up, and then he goes, "You're a fanatic nut job." And it's funny. He goes, "I'm a ideological anti-Zionist." I actually don't identify as an anti-Zionist. Interestingly, more of a non-Zionist.
Is there any evidence that like there might be people in the 50 to 65 male age range that might like act as combatants in Gaza?
So if we look at data from 2014, 99% of combatants were ages 16 to 50. So can there be people outliers there? Yes, but we shouldn't think it's any. We shouldn't. It would be negligible, right? And also, there's been a lot of people trying the whole child combatant thing. I could tell you why we can know that that's insignificant simply by looking at excess teenage male deaths. So if you take 15, 16, and 17-year-old males, there's 2,000 more males of those ages that were killed by females. If we reduce we need to do the 50% baseline, we're talking about just 1,000 excess males of those ages. But again, teenage males are going to die at a higher rate than male boys and male elderly by some amount. So there is plausibly a few hundred combatants, child combatants included on the list. But it's, again, so you want to reduce a few hundred from 20,000? Sure. But to think that it's going to meaningfully impact the data, it just simply doesn't. Simply because there's not enough excess male, teenage boy deaths. All right, and this is like publicly available data, so you could confirm this on your own. Yeah, any other questions? Anything else, Kufar?
I have like a few other things, but like it's not related to the stream. It's related to something else on the server. So I don't want to like derail.
Well, what's it about?
I think it's better to like talk after the stream if possible.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Sure. Let's see what else we have here. Ophir says, has the IDF come out with numbers of combat? Yeah, well, we sometimes hear the IDF saying 25,000 killed. It's kind of been at that number for a while. There's three reasons why we should be skeptical of the number. First of all, it's a number. It's just a claim, right? Like Israel has an incentive to inflate that number. The same way Hamas has an incentive to inflate the civilian number. The difference is when it comes to the civilian number, we have data that's verifiable. When it comes to Israel's claim, it's just a claim. So they do have an incentive to inflate it, but there's two more reasons, or maybe even three, why we should be suspicious of the number. One is, again, whistleblowers have told us, and not only anonymous whistleblowers, one's a high-ranking officer, saying that people are just shot in no-go zones. Unarmed people, men, women, children are shot, and they're just listed as combatants. We've heard this from multiple people that this is how they count combatants. We also know that the IDF is targeting members of the political bureau, non-combatants, as well as journalists have been targeted, according to the Mayor Amit study, an Israeli think tank, that was saying, yeah, these journalists were killed, but because they are somehow have some connection to Hamas. Well, if you're actively targeting members of the political bureau, why wouldn't you count those as like in the death toll, right? So we have reason to believe that they're also including members of the political bureau. And then, and I don't know how much weight we can give this, like it depends how you look at it, but this was probably like 8 months ago. There was a report from the IDF that they retrieved 2,000 weapons from Gaza, like 2,000 firearms. Presumably, some of those were found in stockpiles where you're finding dozens at a time. But also, a lot of those killed are killed in tunnels where you're not going to get their firearms. So I don't know how much to make sense of that. But to kill 25,000 combatants and only retrieve 2,000 firearms seems to be a little bit of a mismatch there. Another way to look at it is just the difference between injured and killed. So I think if you look at other instances of urban warfare, it's something like for every combatant killed, it's 2 to 3 injured. So let's say you do those numbers, it's 25,000 militants killed, another 50,000 injured. That's more than all the militants that are in Gaza, right? So there's a bunch of reasons why we should be suspicious of it. But also, look, if Israel killed 25K, give us their names and ID numbers. Let us know who they are. Produce the data the same way the Ministry of Health is producing the data. And it's just, what's the plausibility that there's still like over 13,000 combatants that are unidentified? Seems highly implausible. There's probably a few thousand buried in tunnels that are not present on the list. A few thousand for sure. 13,000, I don't know about that. Emperor saying Israel doesn't provide any verification their claims. No, there's no verification. No. Emperor Gador says that's an understandable perspective. The Gaza genocide is an eye-opener for showing how human beings can support or be duped into supporting a mass atrocity, even in the modern day. Yeah, I mean, even in the modern day and even in the future, it's just humans, we have this like immense capacity for kindness and compassion for those in our in-group and capacity for evil for our out-group, those who we deem a threat. And most extremists are actually nice people if they don't think you're a threat. So if you walk through Israel and Palestine, doesn't matter where you go, if you go to Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, Ramallah, if you're interacting with the people there and you're not seen as an outsider, meaning somebody of the enemy, you'll be treated with kindness and compassion. They'll invite you in for coffee. It's very nice, warm people on both sides. But if you talk to them about how they feel about the other, well, then you're going to start to see their extremism. So it's something important to understand about extremists. Extremists are generally otherwise normal people. Most of my family are settlers, and they're very nice people. Very, very nice people. Some of the nicest people I know. They're also deeply racist towards Palestinians. Then they're terrified of them. Some, I would say, hate them. Most don't hate them. They're just really scared of them and racist towards them. But like to non-Palestinians, not just to Jews, to non-Palestinians, to people they don't deem a threat, they're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So humans are complicated like that.
Ophir asked, what do you think of people who were not militants at the beginning of the war but then joined Hamas and were killed? One can claim Israel made them become combatants, and if I remember correctly, the numbers the IDF gave implied more than 10,000 combatants joined throughout the war.
Yeah, that's all true. There's no reason to think that there wasn't recruitment efforts going on throughout the war. It's also why it's hard to know how many combatants are left and how many were killed. Because it was something like a year and a few months in, it was, I think, a U.S. report saying after recruitment efforts, there's 35,000 militants, which were the same amount that there were on October 7th. So that was based on recruitment, right? So yeah, I don't think there's any reason to question that.
I think he's asking if like that number might be inside of the fatalities that aren't counted.
Again, potential
that like don't add up for you.
No, that doesn't make any difference because it's all about what the population pyramid looks like, right? It's just like even recruits, like the new recruits are not going to be 5-year-old girls or 80-year-old men, right? Like the recruits are still going to be of a certain demographic. What you will see, and you do see this historically throughout conflicts, as militant groups become more desperate, then they're more likely to bring in child combatants. Like that's when we see use of child combatants generally when you're running out of like military age men, because military age men are better combatants for most things. They're just stronger, better stamina, whatever. But yeah, as you get more desperate, you're more likely to bring in more younger people. And based on the open source data, I think there's people looking really hard to find child combatants. I think they're found like 9, right? Proof like obituaries of 9 child combatants, and they were ages 16 and 17. Maybe one was 15. They found a 13-year-old that was acting as a messenger. But that's pretty much all they found. But these were pretty much not Hamas. They were other militant groups. So Hamas is actually like the most professional. They're like going to have the highest standard for their combatants. The other militant groups they seem much more inclined to bring in children. But the recruitment during the war doesn't drastically change the demographic breakdown of the combatants. And the calculation, if you want to be fair, just take age 15 to 50. The number of combatants outside of that age range is going to be negligible. I'm not saying there's none, but it's not any meaningful amount that you need to take it into account. So the recruitment isn't like the population pyramid is the population pyramid. The only way that this analysis on the death toll is wrong is if there's mass fraud in the list. Right. So that's possible. Let's say Hamas somehow managed to dupe Israel and there's mass fraud on this list that Israel, for whatever reason, can't discover, which is very hard to do, right? Because they could check all these names. They have a lot of intel. They could look into Gaza. We even know from a whistleblower that they looked into the death toll and they confirm it to be true. This was Mikomit put out this report. But yeah, if they somehow duped Israel and released it for public scrutiny and under immense public scrutiny, nobody was able to find fraud, and yet it's a fraudulent list, then yeah, all these numbers change and my analysis is going to be wrong, right? My analysis is based on the idea that the data can more or less be relied on because no fraud has been found. There's a margin of error in the data. Let's be generous and say 5%, but it's not just like the margin of errors goes in both ways. So there's going to be misattributed deaths. There's some amount of natural deaths. There's going to be some people that were killed by Hamas that are on there. But based on everything we found, based on the open source research and it being under immense public scrutiny, people have found a margin of error of like around 1%. So I'm being generous and saying, let's say it's 5%, but there's a margin of error in the other way that there's people not yet accounted for. So the data is not a perfect list, but it's going to give you a very good basis for doing the analysis. And we can't know everything, but we could know the claims of low civilian to combatant ratio is just bullshit. Like it's undeniable. It's undeniable.
Is it possible there are combatants that died that were not put on the list?
100. There's for certain combatants that are not on
like the list, in a substantial amount, like in maybe thousands of combatants that would not be on the list. Is that possible?
Yeah, well, so a few minutes ago, maybe you missed it. I said a few minutes ago, I said I think it's plausible there's still a few thousand combatants that are not on the list. Yeah, I think a few thousand, but I don't think many thousands are unaccounted for. And Gabriel Epstein, he's actually been doing this. He's found, I think at this point, hundreds of combatants based on social media obituaries, and he said most are on the list based on his research. But yeah, we should assume that there's a few thousand civilians and a few thousand combatants that are not yet identified. That should be our assumption at this point. Callistos Cali says, will anything change after the next Israeli election? I don't know. Netanyahu might stay in power. It's pretty rough. Yeah, we got a tough population here. Andrew, you're sharing stuff. Andrew, have you looked into the Chechnya thing? You seem to have some insight on it. You know, if you're interested enough in Chechnya, I can maybe see if my friend would even be willing to come on stream and talk about this. He's one of the most competent researchers I've ever met. So I generally, you know, if he tells me something, I assume it to be true. But again, this is not a foolproof way. So, for example, if I were to need to put out an analysis on Chechnya, or if I wanted to now, in my analysis, were to compare Chechnya to Gaza, I would not just rely on somebody's opinion. I would need to confirm it. But if I'm doing like just more high level understanding of things, and we should all do this, right? We should all have experts that we trust, because we can't research everything on our own. So it's good to have experts that we trust that can fill our gaps of knowledge. So that's the case for the 20th century Chechnya data. But maybe he'll want to come on and talk about it.
Andrew is asking who your friend was.
I don't want to.
Is knowledgeable in Chechnya.
I'm not going to drop his name publicly because it might be sensitive, but I'm happy to tell you offline. So
Okay.
ask me offline. Cool.
I think he might mean Discord username. I'm not sure.
He's not on Discord. You guys may know you may know him or of him, right? But I'm not. I would need to ask him before just dropping his name like that on stream. Cool. We've been doing an hour and 36. Time flies. I miss these streams. I missed you all. Missed the streams. Even you, King of Jace. I appreciate you for the entertainment purposes. I hope you come back. Do the research and come back. I'm waiting for your Substack. Your Substack debunking. Okay, let's see. Rabbi Tyrone. Are you still here, Rabbi Tyrone? Oh, now I think I got insight into your name based on your last comment. If you're still here, I'll answer your question. King of Tyrone goes, do you personally embrace someone if they have a strong track record of fabricating false history and narrative to advance their political agenda, like Black Hebrew Israelites? So your name is trolling the Black Hebrew Israelites. I don't know what you mean by personally embrace. Like I have a few friends from the Hebrew Israelite community. Do I believe that they are ancient Israelites? No, I don't. Do I care all too much? No, not really, as long as they're not harming anybody. But I can understand why co-opting someone else's history is offensive. I get it. It's the Hebrew Israelites. It's kind of like a sad story. So, African Americans got their history taken from them, right? They were stripped of their history, taken as slaves. They didn't really know who they are or where they came from. And then after their liberation, we saw them trying to recreate their history. And one of the recreations of the history was the Hebrew Israelite community. The other was we was kings. Right, that's like another recreation of history, and it's coming from like a place of like oppression and sadness. So I feel for them, but if we're honest about it, that's almost certainly not their real history. I don't know what the right solution is, because I think it helps for people to have a history of who they are and where they came from. But I can understand why it's offensive when someone else's history gets co-opted. So something to think about. And again, this can be proven with DNA tests as well. Take a DNA test. We could see generally where your ancestors come from. So, yeah, Nation of Islam. True, Serge. That's true. There's also some African Americans that claim to be Moroccan. Interesting. Yeah, so we see a very we see a very consistent history. Like there's many different examples of African Americans adopting some history just because they don't know what there is. It's almost like a deep human need to know where you came from. It's almost possible that Jews have done the same thing, right? Like if you look at the Jewish narrative around our history, like about us being this like unified kingdom and this people. From what I understand, it wasn't quite like that. The kingdom wasn't unified as much as we think it was. King David wasn't really the king of all the land. He was like just the king of one tribe. So even our history is a little bit recreated because we also got our history. Well, we did pretty good job like tracing our lineage and stuff like that, but we too kind of like recreated it to some degree. Adar, being oppressed over, oh, you're saying being fucked over doesn't justify appropriating another's history, but I appreciate where you're coming. Yeah. You don't confuse what I'm saying from like for me it's not about justification or not. I just think it's very important to like understand the human psychology and what leads humans to different things. Like justified, not justified. Like I just don't know how to use that in my like worldview. It's like no, they shouldn't do it. There's a better way to do it, but I'm just describing reality. They do it, so they're fulfilling some human need they have, right? I think the more honest we are about like the human needs people have, the better positioned we are to try to find some solution. But I agree that appropriating other people's history is not the best way to do it. It's also deeply offensive. It's kind of similar to the thing with Ireland. There wasn't a truly unified state until 1917. Oh, is that right? I didn't know that. Yeah, so a lot of people are doing this, A lot of people are doing this. Again, it comes down to what we started this whole conversation with, that we don't believe things that are true. We believe things that are compelling. Like we're a story-based species, We're not like a fact-based species. We're a story-based species. The story is what sticks. The story is what compels. Facts, boring. And I mean, you could even understand why from an evolutionary perspective. It's like facts didn't keep us alive. You didn't need to know facts. Like you need to know basic facts, like eat that, don't eat that, run from that, hunt that. But like not like a complex systems, not many facts. But stories seemed to separate us from other hominid species, right? Our ability to expand beyond Dunbar's number, and maybe even Dunbar's number is to some degree connected to the story, because other hominids, they say Dunbar's number is around 150. It's the amount of personal connections you could have. And one of the theories why we defeated Neanderthals, there's a few. But Neanderthals were physically stronger than us. They had a more fast twitch muscle fiber. Their brain was larger. We don't know if they were smarter, but their brain was larger. But one of the theories is their tribes were smaller. They weren't able to work in as large groups. That's one. We don't know if they had projectiles the same way. So something about the way their shoulder, like we don't know if they could throw spears. So we just kind of fucked them up because of our numbers and maybe our ability to use projectiles. But you could see how our like stories allows you to go beyond Dunbar. So like, you don't need to know somebody personally, but if you're they're of my tribe. What is a tribe? Tribe is a story. Or they're of my religion, right? That's a story there. So these stories allow you to connect with a greater number of people. And I think the person who explained this the best, certainly informed my opinion on this, is Yuval Harari in the book Sapiens, right? How he describes the imagined order. And I know that book was criticized, but I think that book, again, it points to the same thing. Yuval Harari in his book Sapiens optimized not for truth, he optimized for like it being compelling. So he had to kind of, like a lot of historians criticized it. But if he would have optimized it for like accuracy, it wouldn't have been as popular. He had to like take out details, dumb it down, simplify it, and then it became, boom, a universal bestseller. And it served a purpose of popularizing certain concepts. I think the most important one being the imagined order, our miraculous ability to collectively believe in what doesn't exist. So there's always going to be that trade-off. Rab Dubs, did you make a video about the discussion with your settler friend and you're going to do more protective presence? Yeah, great question. So yeah, I did. It was actually, a lot of people got upset with it because So let me back up a little bit to give people context because it's pretty cool. Hold on one second. So this was probably 6 months ago. There was this interfaith dialogue meeting. It was like a camping trip, and it was cool. There was like 200 Israelis and Palestinians for this overnight camping trip in Beit Jala, Area C of the West Bank. And when we were there, one of the organizers, Alice Kissia, who lives nearby, she saw settlers go on her property to take stuff. So she came to me and a few others and she said, "Guys, there's settlers on my property. Let's go confront them." So we're like, "Let's do it." So we get there, we confront them. It was like 2 young men and 1 teenager taking stuff from her property. We get there. They're saying this isn't your property anymore, whatever. They're arguing about some shit. Anyways, we called the we didn't let them take the stuff. They said, "Okay, let's call the police." The police come and they say, "We don't deal with this. Call the military." The military comes. After 2 or so hours, the military is like, "Okay, guys, you can't take the stuff. Put it back and go." This is all live streamed too. You could see this on my channel. Just type in "confronting settlers" or something like this. After that happened, Alice reached out to me saying that she wants to stop fighting with them and she wants to try to help them and build ties with them, which I thought was a great idea. So we got on a call, me, Alice, and a few others, to talk about how we could do something with them. She started telling me the story of like who their ringleader is, who runs the settlement, and who sends them to go take this stuff. And I recognized the name. It was a buddy of mine from my days in the IDF, someone who I haven't spoken to in 15 years. But what a crazy coincidence. So right after that call, I called him, Lior. I called him out of the blue after 15 years. He answered. And I didn't mention anything about Alice, but I just said, "Hey, I've been spending more time in the West Bank. I've been meaning to reach out to visit you." He's like, "Yeah, come by." So a few weeks later, I went to visit him. And you can't drive to his thing. Like he said, "Get off at this checkpoint and call me." So I do it. And he's like, "Okay, I'm sending my guys to pick you up." And I was so worried that the guys he was going to send were the same guys I confronted, because I wanted to have the element of surprise. I didn't want the guys to like show up to pick me up and then tip him off and make this whole big deal. Thankfully, the guy he sent was not one of the people I confronted. I get there, we're catching up, and he built this awesome farm. And then I tell him, it's like, "I found out we have a mutual." I said, "I found out, my friend." He's like, "Who?" He's like, "One of your enemies." He's like, "Enemy? I don't have enemies." And then I mentioned her name. He's like, "Oh, how do you know Alice?" And then I told him the story. I told him that I was there that night of the thing. He's like, "Oh, really?" And then he pulled up like video from that night. He's like, "Oh, yeah, that is you. I didn't recognize you when I saw the video of that incident." And then he started telling me his side of the story. And that's when I understood how complicated it is. You see, Alice's family lived on that land for many generations. I don't know when I don't know if they ever had ownership or if they were leasing it. I don't know the exact story. At some point, the JNF got rights to the land. Again, this doesn't mean they got rights to the land in an ethical way. They got rights to the land legally according to Israeli law. Okay. Now, from Lyra's perspective, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but you could see how easy it is to reach this conclusion if you're raised in that environment. He's like, "Yeah, Alice is like, I'm renting this land from the JNF. I'm paying them. I waited for 2 years to get all my paperwork to be able to move here. Now I'm trying to like farm and provide for I have 7 kids. I'm trying to provide for my family, and my livelihood's being affected because Alice keeps like harassing me and damaging my property. And so in his worldview, he's very much he's like, I'm following the law. I did everything right. And now I can't provide for my family. Now, if he was able to zoom completely out of, his perspective, he could say, okay, but how did the JNF get this? Is this unjust to Alice, right? But it's a very hard ask. It's like a human being that would reach that conclusion is going to be an outlier in society. And we can't expect everybody to be outliers. So it showed me how much it's a systemic issue, right? Like you have a legal issue here where the JNF somehow got rights to the land and are going to give it to a Jewish family. Alice and her family are certainly victims, but in a certain sense, so is Lear and his family, because he was taught that, follow the law, do the right thing, pay rent, and just work the land and raise your family. He's always been very against, he's like, I always tell my people, we never harm anybody. We're against violence. We're just here to build and grow. And I keep getting harassed. And I told him, I said, but can't you see that Alice is like a victim here? He's like, and he was able to acknowledge that. He's like, yeah, I could see that actually. It's like, but what do you want me to do? I'm paying rent. I did this all legally. I still very much support Alice in this and her getting access to her land back. But initially, it's very easy to see the situation as like, oh, this settler community, they're like conspiring to take it all over and harass people. But then you go there, and only because I've known him for years, I know him to be sincere when he was saying this. It's definitely not like this evil guy just trying to harass a poor Palestinian girl. And it just shows why we need systemic change that will not allow stuff like this to happen, right? Like people who are living on land should be able to stay on their land without getting displaced. And the people who are paying rent for land also shouldn't be paying for rent for land that's contested. I do think that the court ruled in favor of Alice for some of the land. So I think that some positive happened. But yeah, that's where it went. That's what happened with it. Will I be doing more protective presence? Yeah, for sure. I've just been gone for a little over a month, but yeah, I'm going to get back into it now. The Galilee is saying, Sapiens by Yuval was criticized for not presenting anything new. The history was on point. Interesting. But I saw some people critique that he oversimplified some things. But if it's not for not presenting anything new, I don't know if that's a critique. He popularized it, right? Like, okay, he didn't present anything new, but he literally took all these concepts and presented it in a way that reads like a novel. Like it very rarely do you read a nonfiction that's a page turner like Sapiens is. Like at least in my experience, like very rarely are books that easy to read. It was like reading Harry Potter. You just want to read another page and another page and another page. But it's real stuff. You learn from every paragraph there. So I thought it was brilliantly done. And I think we'll wrap it up in a few minutes. What do we have coming up? I don't know. I'm going to do 2 streams a week, so we'll do another one in a few days. If you guys have any suggestions, what you'd like to see happen, let me know. Yeah, I've been meaning to do a few more debates. I'm going to have Noam Dorman on sometime soon. Tal Oran, the traveling clat. We've been meaning to debate, but he keeps disappearing. I don't want to say he's scared, but I could see him starting to watch my videos to prep and then deciding he doesn't want to, because he said he would do it and now he's not getting back to me. But I'm going to try to get on a debate with Tal Oran, traveling clat. We're friendly. Like I've known him for years. I'm at this point. I'm actually like, if it was a year ago, to said I consider him a friend, and I still do, but it's hard for me to actually describe him that way because of how deeply engaged he's been in just the worst types of propaganda. So it's hard for me to like say that's a friend, but I'm definitely friendly with him. Like when I see him, it's all good vibes and stuff, and we have a good time together. But I lose a lot of respect for people who engage in propaganda, especially when it's propaganda to support the human rights violations of another people. But we'll hash it out, hopefully, on a live stream. Who else have I been meaning to speak to? I had a few more. I'll need to remember. I'm also going to start talking to more anti-Semites. That's going to be a new theme, right? We're gonna expand beyond Israel-Palestine. We're gonna have some the Jewish question will be discussed more and more. Get ready for some JQ discussions. Oh yeah, if there's any JQ people you think I should talk to, DM me. Give me some suggestions, recommendations. Eventually, we'll get Nick Fuentes. We'll chat with Nicky Boy for sure. Okay. Cool. For those on Discord, I mean, we could just. Do you want to say something?
Sorry, the other thing that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, sure.
Could really do that somewhere a bit more, I don't know, private, in a couple of months.
Yeah. When you say kind of private, do you mean not on live stream and on Discord, or just
just not on live stream?
But you're cool for the community to be there,
if necessary. Yeah.
Okay, so we're just going to turn this into some kind of an after party on Discord. I'll stay on for another 10 or so minutes so you and I could chat. But for those who want to join Discord, there's a link here in the description, and then I'll drop a link in the chat as well. You'll see the conversation continue. Serge is saying,
I don't know. It might be better in a private call. Actually, I'm not sure, 100% sure though.
Yeah, we could do a private call. So, Serge is saying, who do you have in mind talking to? Whoever, I spoke to Adam Green a few years ago, and a year ago, Jean Francois Guarepi. But I've been talking to Jake Shields. Jake Shields invited me on his podcast. I just need to make it out to Vegas to do that. So maybe in the summer before Burning Man I'll go. And I'll be out west. So Jake Shields could be an interesting one. Nick Fuentes would be cool to talk to. Who else? Who else is there? Candace? Talk to Candace. And then there's some people who are I don't know, Anna Kasparian. Is she anti-Semitic? Maybe not yet. Maybe on the verge. Hassan Piker. Left-wing anti-Semitism has a different nature and texture than the right-wing anti-Semitism. But I'm down to talk to all these people. As long as they'll engage in good faith, let's do it. Serge says Candace is evil. There's something deeply problematic about her, I agree. She also has a very stunning example. It's just a stunning case of Dunning-Kruger. Literally one of the dumbest commentators imaginable, which just shows she's so immensely popular, right? We got a problem. That's another thing we need to talk about, how popular mediocrity is, and how mediocre people are winners in the United States. Why is that? I think it's something also about Jeffrey Epstein, right? In many regards, Jeffrey Epstein was a winner. He wasn't really good at anything. He wasn't smart or sophisticated. He wasn't providing value for the world. He just figured out a little scheme to become immensely powerful through networking. In a healthy society, there should be nothing interesting or impressive about Jeffrey Epstein. He shouldn't have been in the position of power he was, because he's not special enough. Same thing about Trump and Biden getting elected, right? So Candace is an example of that. Emperor Ghidorah saying, "How is Anna Kasparian anti-Semitic?" I'm not sure. I haven't watched her stuff, but I know a few weeks ago she was depicting Jews with the stereotypical let's find it. I'm sure you saw it. So that's not I mean, that is definitely a form of anti-Semitism. Like to depict Jews in that way is probably not. It's one of those anti. It's like it's not an ideological anti-Semitism. It's like an internalized stigma about Jews. So it's a different category. In terms of an internalized stigma about Jews, most people in the world are anti-Semitic if we're going to look at it that way. But I'm actually I care less about that kind of, call it, prejudice, because I think almost all people have it towards most group. Right, like most people have prejudice towards other groups, and generally, if there's like a group that acts different from the average of the, let's say there's like a minority in a society, and that minority has behaviors that are different from the majority, you're going to have a stigma about them. It's very natural, it's very human. I don't really care about that. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. What's most important is like how you treat individuals, treat them with dignity and respect. I think it's more the ideological hate that is problematic, like people who are like spreading uh, ideas about like Jews being evil or Jews being inferior. Like that's the problematic stuff. That's the kind of hate that's problematic. So I don't think Anna Kasparian's in that camp, but like I think we started to see some of the internalized stuff coming out when she did that little thing. But yeah, so I don't like. I'm not putting Anna in like the Nick Fuentes camp in any way, shape, or form. And by the way, I actually think Nick Fuentes is better than a lot of the anti-Semites because he's better and more dangerous. So he's much less unhinged. He's constantly calling out the other anti-Semites for just being unhinged and dumb and conspiratorial. The reason he's more dangerous is because of how much more compelling he is. Like his narrative about Jews is so compelling that it's much likely to become mainstream. And it speaks, I think, to an actual like grievance that a lot of people have, that Jews are disproportionately powerful and Jews look out for one another and our interests and values are perhaps different than the average American. So for the average American, why should they be comfortable with all this institutional power we have? That's like Nick Fuentes' primary message, right? So that's very compelling. And he'll also mix that in, right? He'll mix that in by saying Jews are a remarkable people. They're smart, they're funny, they're intelligent, but they have different interests and they're too powerful in our society. So he's much more rational and less unhinged than a lot of the other people, but he's also because he's so compelling, he's able to spread this hate to otherwise like moderate people. And the problem is when you're spreading these ideas without actually like real solutions, when you spread hate about a people and don't give them a solution, then you just increase the chance for violence. If he has an issue with those in positions of power having different interests from the common individual, okay. First of all, that's probably true, but it's not only true amongst Jews. So, for example, the Jews in Wall Street and the Catholics in Wall Street have more in common with one another than they have in common with us, right? So that's something that he misses. But also, like, what's the solution? So, okay, we need systemic change so that our systems and institutions are reflecting the will of the people. This has nothing to do with whether you're Jewish or not. So that's why it's so dangerous, because you fuel this anger and rage without giving a solution. So you just increase the chance of violence. And if you don't like Jews looking out for each other and being insular, well, the best way to do that is to not make Jews feel threatened, right? If Jews are getting attacked, if they're being othered, that's why we look out for one another. We only survived because we look out for one another. So the anti-Semites actually make us more insular and make us look out for one another more. So if you're concerned about Jewish power and Jews looking out, like being insular, the best thing you can do is try to make Jews feel more American or more part of the societies they're a part of. That's probably the solution. But I'll have that conversation with him at some point. Whatever. I think you got. I said I'll pull up the Anna Kasparian thing. What do you even type in? Like, what would you even type in to do that? Oh, okay. I mean, I thought it was kind of funny, but like you could understand why this is it's like some anti-Semitic trope for sure. But again, I accept that I'm an outlier because, you know, I'm not super triggered by it. I'm not going to say other people shouldn't be triggered by it. They have every right to.
Like, yes, we're going to surveil everybody. Everyone will be on their best behavior. Yes, you're a freak. You're a total creep.
Okay.
All right.
I mean, it's also just a caricature of like someone who's just generally like evil, but a lot of that is, there's like a very long history of Jewish caricature and like bad guy caricature being intertwined. Whatever, I'm not holding that against her. The reason I actually want to talk to her is because she's pushing the wide-scale blackmail operation that Epstein was supposedly running. So seeing these the left-wing media go full blue anon without sufficient evidence, that's more why I want to talk to her. Because like I think we all understood the problem with like legacy media, but is new media better? Unclear. So, okay, here's the interesting thing. Out of all the people I've seen talk about Epstein, this might surprise some of you guys, but and SRG, I'm responding to you. Michael Tracy and Richard Hanania are the closest to getting it right, in my opinion. I think they have gone a little too far in like minimizing the severity of like an adult male sleeping with a teenager. I think they kind of like said, that's no big deal. That's not where I'm agreeing with them. But in terms of them like saying there's the evidence for a blackmail operation or the evidence for mass child rape is not there, I agree with them. I think they're the closest to getting it right. And they're very courageous for taking that stance because it's very unpopular. And I think it was Michael Tracy said this, and he made a good point. You could see how like the witch hunts, how did it get to a place in history where people were literally like hunting women and killing them because they thought they were witches? Well, it's this is it. Like if you think Noam Chomsky and Deepak Chopra and what's his name, Peter Attia, the fitness guy, if you think they went to Epstein Island and raped children and should be accused of raping children, you likely would have been involved in a witch hunt. Like that's just the same energy, same psychology, for sure. YF Kanan, Anna isn't anti. No, you misunderstand me. I don't think what she's saying about Epstein is anti-Semitic. I was saying which anti-Semites I'd like to talk to, and I mentioned Anna Kasparian, and I said I don't think she's anti-Semitic, but I think she's maybe getting there, and I brought up the caricature she did of the Jew, you know? But the real reason I want to talk to her is about the Epstein files. Talking about Epstein, thinking it's a blackmail operation, there's nothing anti-Semitic about that. I just think it's the wrong conclusion. I just don't think the evidence is there. I think what Epstein was doing I think there's a much different explanation that even Michael Tracy and Hanania, I don't think they gave like the full model for like what he was doing. I haven't seen anybody explain it yet, but I think they're the closest to describing it accurately in terms of just calling it out, you know. And I think there's a case to be made that releasing the files was a mistake, because we see that the masses just are just seeing whatever they want to see. Like whatever you want to see, you just project that into the emails, and you're finding proof of it. It's just like the most intense confirmation bias everywhere you look. They're like, oh, they're eating children. Why? Because they like said order pizza or something like that. Like, you know, and also this is I would say there's some is an invasion of privacy, something connected like what's the word I'm looking for? Something against one's civil liberties to take a personal email and release it to the public simply because you corresponded with somebody who did something bad. So anybody who think about this, the precedent should not be if somebody emails a bad person, that email should be for the public to see, right? That's like a very bad precedent. What was Epstein doing? Okay, so I'm going to do like a full analysis on this, but just in short, I think Epstein himself did have a primary attraction for teenage girls. I think the clinical term for that is ephebophilia or whatever. Culturally, we call it pedophilia. I don't care for the debate on terminology, but there's a clinical term and then there's the cultural term. I think that was his primary sexual attraction, and I think he was having sex with underage girls, statutory rape. I think he engaged in that quite a bit, and I think it was perhaps some of his inner circle was as well. If it's people like Trump, Clinton, or Dershowitz, maybe they were also doing that. Prince Andrew also. But the island, if you look at the people on the island, based on most evidence we have, those were not underage girls on the island. It was 19, 20, 21-year-old girls. What Epstein, I think, understood was just the universal desire that men have for beautiful young women. So he understood if he could create these safe spaces where powerful men can come and enjoy beautiful young women, well, then he's extremely interesting and magnetic. And it worked. So imagine there's just this island, and you're an entrepreneur, you're wealthy, you don't want to you're worried about cheating on your wife because you don't want it to get out. If you go with a prostitute, she could leak it. You're not going to be on dating apps, but you hear that there's an island with all these pre-vetted women and the only people invited are other powerful people. Well, there's a lot of appeal to that. And then the second you have that going, even if you're not into these beautiful young women, you want the network that Epstein has. Epstein knew everybody because he had something very appealing. That was his allure, the beautiful young women. So then other entrepreneurs wanted to be around Epstein so they could get connections. Like Ehud Barak, it seems like his interest in Epstein was access to money, access to capital. Based on what we see from the correspondence. So that's what he was doing. The second that all breaks down the second there's a lot of underage girls there, and the second there's blackmail. Because if there's an island with a bunch of 15-year-olds, you're not going to have you're not going to have the most powerful people in the world just freely going. Like, it's way too risky. People are going to talk about it. People are going to leak. There's all these hundreds of people. None of them said, hey guys, I got invited to the island and it was sketchy what was going on there. Nobody's saying that because they had immense plausible deniability because they were of age almost entirely. Again, Epstein did have his, he seemed to have a pyramid scheme where he was, I don't know, pyramid, yeah, call it that, where he was literally bringing in teenage girls for his own personal pleasure. I think we can say that with high certainty, but that's not the evidence we have for what was happening on the island or at these events he was doing with these powerful people. So he just understood that if he can give powerful people access to beautiful young women, he'd be immensely powerful. And I think another reason why we can think it's almost certainly not blackmail is because he wasn't even hanging out with lawmakers. He wasn't interested in lawmakers. He was hanging with entrepreneurs and academics and celebrities. Very few lawmakers, relatively speaking. So none of it really makes sense. And also imagine this. Okay, let's say you go to his island and next thing you know, you're getting blackmailed. You're going to tell at least your close friends, don't go to Epstein Island. Like, you're going to want to look out for your friends so they don't get blackmailed. It wouldn't work. It just would not work at that scale. It wouldn't. And also, let's try to find, like, okay, if it was blackmail, let's find me lawmakers whose opinions changed once they went to his island. Like, find me proof of this blackmail. Like, if you could find a list, like all these lawmakers had one stance on Israel, and then after they started associating with Epstein, they became more pro-Israel. Okay, maybe then you have something. But lawmakers weren't even going there. How many Congress people and senators went there? Very few. So that's high level. I'll probably I'll do a deeper dive into this, but hope that clarifies. And if anybody disagrees or has a source or compelling evidence, feel free to send it to me. It'll help inform my analysis. But that's in short. So Sub-Zero, you're saying something I'll watch is illegal arms deals. So in terms of intelligence connections, he definitely knew people in intelligence, right? He was immensely connected. So yeah, you could find a connection between Epstein and U.S. intelligence and Israeli intelligence, Saudi royal family, for sure. But that's a very different claim from the like running a blackmail operation, you know. Tracy, don't give a good argument for nothing. Andrew says, Hanania, Tracy, don't give a good argument for a nothing burger conclusion. Okay, I will look into it. But if anybody does have, if you guys have good sources that you think will challenge what I'm saying, let me know. And do you guys, these Sub-Zero and Andrew, do you guys think these make counter cases to what I'm saying? So King of Jace, you're back. You say you found 8 other battles or wars with higher combatant ratios than Gaza. Okay, share them. But I don't think you even are, you don't even, like, start with this. What's the civilian to combatant ratio in Gaza? Let's start there. Noor, you're saying bullshit. It is bullshit. You should have seen all the stuff he was saying before. But you want to tell us what it is? Because so far, all you've said is claims that have never been backed up by anything. No. Okay. So you're making a big mistake. First of all, civilian to combatant ratio is not the percentage of civilians killed. That's a ratio that speaks only about violent fatalities. So there's 2 different stats. You could say, what is the percentage of civilians killed? There you look at violent fatalities and non-violent fatalities. Civilian to combatant ratio is a category that measures violent fatalities. You brought up Darfur. Darfur was overwhelmingly famine deaths. That's not how you calculate civilian to combatant ratio. So even here, you're just showing that you don't understand the calculation. But it is true. If you include indirect deaths, which we don't have numbers for indirect deaths in Gaza yet, but it's not going to be super high. But if we want to include also indirect deaths, then Sudan is close to Gaza. The one problem in the data is that, and I don't know why they do this, it's a little bit dishonest, but they take all the malnutrition deaths that happen in Sudan and say all these are indirect deaths. But a place like Sudan has a baseline of some amount of famine deaths, even when there's no war, but which are natural deaths, but they include those as indirect deaths. So the indirect deaths number is inflated by some amount because it's included the natural famine deaths, but whatever. Even if you want to include that, so that does come close, but that's not what we're talking about. The stat I gave was civilian combatant ratio. And at the very beginning, I was very clear, okay? Sometimes I misspeak, but I was very clear. The rate of violent fatalities, that's not indirect deaths, of women and children in Gaza is the highest in the 21st century. That was the stat I gave, okay? Yeah, Gaza, in terms of violent fatalities, I think we can assume with like a high degree of certainty, we're talking about not 80 to 90% civilians. If we include indirect deaths, we don't know how many indirect deaths there's been, but that could push it to over 90. But we're not gonna, the indirect deaths are not as high as many people think it is. Like there was a Lancet study from a while back that said like 180. It was a Lancet op-ed. It wasn't like one of their real studies. But they pulled data from conflicts that are just not comparable. Because of UNRWA, actually, Gaza had as poor as Gaza is and was, UNRWA helped Gaza be relatively healthy. So we didn't see mass indirect deaths.
Wait, hold on. I think there was an Al Jazeera article claiming that 68,000 people in Darfur were killed. Sorry, in El Fasher were killed in like 3 weeks, which was like the same. It also Al Jazeera also cites like 68,000 when it comes to Palestine.
Wait. Again, one more time.
Al Jazeera, I believe, claimed that 68,000 residents of El Fasher were killed by the RSF.
So you know what's interesting?
Like
somebody brought that up the other day. Somebody brought that up the other day, and I asked her for a link, and she sent me a link which said 1,000 children were killed. And then I said, "What do you mean? You just said it was like 30-something thousand. And her response was, yeah, well, they destroyed the records of those killed. The missing deaths is a feature, not a bug. I'm like, wait, so where's your claim come from? But you can send me a link to that. I just saw a claim. It said 1,000 killed and maimed children in a few weeks. But are you talking about total or just children?
I'm talking about total 68,000.
Oh, well, total. Okay. Of
all the demographics, men, women, children, everything.
And that was recently.
I believe fairly recently. Yeah.
That was a few months. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that's saying that at least the UN report says 1,000 children. So the number of children was, if anything, I think that's just another data point to show what the percentage of children, how much higher the percentage of children killed in Gaza is compared to even that example where they explain 1,000 killed and injured, where in Gaza it's 20,000 killed.
Yeah, sure, but people have taken satellite photos showing just completely empty markets, everyone in Al-Fasher is gone. They take satellite photos where you can see bloodstains from satellite photos, just pooling on the ground in Al-Fasher.
Oh no, I for sure, but you can't conclude a death toll that way. There was a brutal massacre and mass ethnic cleansing for sure. But what can we conclude from satellite imagery? You know. Are you still here?
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to get you.
And it's the same thing in Gaza. You see the satellite imagery of people said, oh, 680,000 killed. Look at the satellite imagery. It's all gone. But again, it's true. The satellite imagery shows the devastation in Gaza to civilian infrastructure. The same way in Al-Fasher, you could see the devastation from satellite imagery. It doesn't give you insight into the death toll, right? Because you can't. People wanted to conclude from the satellite imagery in Gaza that it was 680,000, but most of the buildings that were destroyed in Gaza were empty or had low numbers of people in them. Okay, this is how we know King of Jace is just not worth engaging. It's just, I'm sorry, bro. In the nicest way possible. It's not just an information difference. There's just a cognitive gap here that it's just not for me to say. You have no way to disprove the IDF that the IDF killed 25K fighters, bro. You can't prove a negative. It's on them to prove they killed 25,000. Check this out. You're a rapist. Prove it. Prove that you're not. Did you guys know King of Jace is a rapist? He's a serial rapist. Prove that you're not. I'm waiting. Where's the proof? You serial rapist. Come on. Oh, no proof. Okay, you can't prove it, so I guess you must be. So, bro, you got to go. You got to go learn some epistemology, learn some logic, study a little bit, then come back. These are the big leagues here, my guy. I'm sorry. These are the big leagues here. I appreciate you trying, but we're moving on. You know, this is a space for open-minded, intelligent people. And sorry if I sound elitist, but what can we do? Maybe I am a little elitist. Nora, you said I took it too far. Might be.
I sent it. Sorry, I sent the source for the deaths in the stage. I'll find the other one.
I'd prefer the primary source, not the Zateo though. What is this based off of? I'd rather just read where it comes from. You know what I'm saying?
Hang on. I believe it came from the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab by Nathaniel Raymond.
It's the UN report?
I'm not sure. It's the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab. I do not know if that was forwarded to the UN or not.
Okay. Well, I'm just telling you the UN report states 1,000 children killed and injured. And again, it's it's almost cold and callous, comparing. It's only 1,000 killed and injured. No, that's horrible, right? We shouldn't it's not to minimize it. It's just people are very adamant in trying to frame Gaza as just normal and other places, and it's just not. It's worse. And okay, and even Yeah, yeah. It even is worse than Al-Fashar, especially if the number you know what? Let's say the number 1,000 is off by like a few X's. Maybe it's 3, 4, 5,000. It's still less, you know. But we could look more into these numbers. I give you my word that I'll do a deeper review on 20th century Chechnya. But I read the Al-Fashar UN report, and it was 1,000 killed and injured. So it's horrible, but it's not coming close to Gaza numbers.
Actually, like UN reports are very conservative when it comes to like the number killed, because they have like a much higher standard of proof for like when death is logged. Here, I'll send a few more sources.
Let's see how they reported on Gaza. Well, initially on Gaza, they were being very irresponsible. So initially on Gaza, they were reporting Gaza Media Office data, which was overstating numbers, and then eventually they switched to Ministry of Health numbers, which was the right thing to do. And then what the propagandists did, they're like, oh, you see, the UN changed their numbers because the Ministry of Health was lying, but it was really just the UN decided to use a different, more accurate source. So that was one example of them. I've seen the UN do some irresponsible stuff. So, for example, you know how a lot of people say, according to the UN, the civilian to combatant ratio in urban warfare is 9-1. That's not true. But the UN had like a press release that like kind of implied that, and then people use it. I see we have History Speaks here. Let's bring History Speaks here, because he's actually, I told you how I looked into different conflicts. Actually, History Speaks, Matthew has looked into it on a much deeper level than me. So let's see what he has to say. This will be our second time speaking today, first time publicly. Matthew.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, and we're also live streaming, just so you know.
Right, yeah. I just wanted to, I'm jumping in quickly. I wanted to tell you something I just found in the data. So I've been doing, just so you guys know, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the DFLP, sort of a Marxist-Leninist group that was very prominent in Palestinian history as a militant terrorist group, whatever we want to call it. No longer very prominent. They just have a few hundred fighters. But what's interesting about them is they've actually released, purportedly, if we believe them, comprehensive list of fighters that have died since October 7th. And what I've been doing is cross-checking these against open sources and the Ministry of Health data. And one thing I want to share with you, Adar, is that I found that 5 of the 67 people who were killed in the DFLP group were killed on October 7th in Israel. Okay, you got that? In Israel, right? And 4 of these 5 appear in the Ministry of Health list. So it seems to me.
Wait, how many of how many?
4 of the 5 fighters who were killed in Israel, right? So this wouldn't count toward the civilian to combatant ratio in Gaza. This would relate to how the Israelis conducted themselves in Israel, right? 4 of the 5 men who were killed on October 7th in Israel were counted in the Ministry of Health list. So in other words, they're overcounting combatants.
Interesting.
Do you follow that or no?
Yeah.
Now, it could be that this is a 1-off or 4-off, but of the 5, so this organization, open sources, confirmed 5 of their fighters were killed on October 7th. Of these 5, 4 I found in the Ministry of Health database. And again, this isn't helping them. These are fighters.
Well, let me challenge that a little bit. I'll tell you 2 things that would make that a little bit different. So, if you're killed on October 7th, you're much more likely to be identified as killed than if you were killed in a tunnel, right? So it's a little bit of a different data set. Like it's a different circumstance than people killed in tunnels. And then
No, but they shouldn't be in the, like, my point is, bro, if they are systematically, you're not really understanding the point. If they are systematically including people killed in Israel, that is going to have a distorting effect on the data and make it seem more combatant. Because what are we trying to figure out in this data? We're trying to figure out how the Israelis conducted themselves in Gaza. We're not trying to figure out what their civilian to combatant ratio was in Israel. It was probably 1 to hundreds in Israel, right?
Yeah.
They weren't trying to kill Israeli civilians. They were trying not to very hard. So my point is, if they are including people who were killed in Israel, Palestinian militants, that will have a distorting effect on the data, which already looks extremely civilian heavy, but it'll look, it'll be even more so in reality if these names get excluded. The question is whether these are systematically included or whether this was a one-off incident. Does my point make sense here?
No, maybe it's too late in the evening and my brain's just not working.
Okay.
Wait.
Suppose,
Also, yeah. One more time from the top.
Suppose, for argument's sake, I'm not saying this is true. I don't have any evidence of this. But suppose, for argument's sake, every Palestinian militant killed in Israel was included in the Ministry of Health data. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That would have a distorting effect on the data. The data would look more young male and would have more combatants in point of fact than it should.
Right, but this is only for sure. But this is only in the assumption that combatants aren't included in the list.
Correct. And we don't have proof of that yet. But I have to say, I would have expected all of those would have been excluded, and seeing 4 of the 5 were included.
I see. So okay. So you know, I've
I'm
been
not saying I know this. No. Not saying I know that.
Yeah.
No. But I'm saying for 4 of the 5 in this little DFLP group, which only had 67 fatalities, of the 5 that were killed on October 7th in Israel, 4 of them appear in the Ministry of Health database. So what that prompts is a research question: is there systematic? But most of these were included. This teeny little group, most of their combatants killed in Israel were included in the Ministry of Health. What about most overall? Right, most of the 1,500 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is, it could potentially be which would be massively ironic. It could potentially be more combatant heavy than is the reality. But if they're including October 7th fatality.
Wait, but is anybody assuming that the combatants are not included? Like, I know at some point I've questioned the extent to which combatants were included.
No. Again, you're missing. I assumed that the only combatants included were combatants killed in Gaza. Combatants killed in Israel don't tell us anything about how the IDF conducted themselves in Gaza.
Oh! I get what you're saying. You're saying when we're looking at the ratios, we're not only looking at ratios of the airstrikes campaigns, we're looking at it's airstrike campaigns plus, let's say, 1,500 more military-age men that were killed in Gaza, where at that point there's going to be 0 civilians killed. So if you exclude those 1,500,
no, in Israel, I mean.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Let's assume there's 1,500 names on the list that were killed in Gaza. It skews the picture a little bit. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't know that's true, but I'm now suspicious that might be true because 4 out of the because again, we had 5 names in this list of people who were killed on October 7th, and I found in Israel, and I found 4 of those 5 on the Ministry of Health list.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
which would be the biggest irony in the universe, because we've had 2.5 years of propaganda that the civilians killed are exaggerated. They may in fact be exaggerating combatants killed.
Right, but how much does this actually change the data? Let's say everybody killed on October 7th is listed. I would assume they should.
I mean, if that's 1,000, it would change the data. 1,000 combatants, or if it's 2/3, let's say, it would change the data.
Let's open the data. It would change it by only a few single-digit percent, though, if I am calculating correctly. Yeah, it would change it, but I don't think it's going to change.
Well, is there 1,600 killed on 7 October? Let's say 1,000 of those are on the list. That would change it, I think.
Well, let's see. What's the number we have? What do we want to say? Let's say military age. We're going to say 15. I'm being charitable by saying 15 because we know the number of 15-year-old combatants is negligible. But let's be
We
charitable.
don't know. This could be a fluke too. But
Yeah, but let's.
I'm gonna post
No,
about these.
let's be charitable. 15 to 50, right? Also, we know there's very few combatants. Those, so 33,000 in that age group. 3,000 would be 10%, so 1,000 would be 3%. Yeah, so it would change. It would change.
Wait, are you sure it's 33,000 in that age group?
Or at least based on the newest.
Men?
Yeah, on the newest list, in the ages 15 to 50.
Are you sure that's not including women?
Hold on.
Because I mean, it could. I suppose. No, it could.
No. It's just men.
Could,
yeah, 33,000. So it would change it by around 3%, which is something, but it's not huge.
Well, I'm not sure. So my figure for 16 to 49 is 24,480. So I guess does adding 15 and 50 really add that many? Because I'm quite confident 16 to 49 is 24,480.
16 to 49.
Because I've been doing a lot of men.
Let's see. Hold on.
I think you might be adding women.
No. Yeah, 16 to 49 is 31,897. I mean, check.
Unless I'm doing something wrong.
Check. I mean, it's the same. We should have the same list, right? 60. Yeah. Okay. I
have the newest one too. I think there must be something wrong you're doing. Yeah, bro, that can't be right. Look, 18 to 59 is 32,694 men. And 17, 16, 15 is only 3,000. Well, I guess it could be right, theoretically.
So Elon Frankel, you're saying hi, Dar. Hey, Elon, good to see you here. Long time. You said males die at a 50% higher rate at ages 0 to 50. Yeah. If you take all let's take out combatant ages and look at all other ages, males died at a 50% higher rate. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I know, bro. I think I'm mistaken. I think my figure for 24,480 is 18 to 39. So I think you were right. Sorry.
So then, yeah, all good. And then Elon, you're saying, but in those ages groups, it's not fair to say there weren't combatants. No, it is. There might be like some single instances, but if you look at past data, and Matthew, you looked into this in 2014. Ages 16 to 50 was 99% of combatants. We are not seeing evidence. There's people looking through open source to try to find child combatants. I think they found 9 combatants under the age of 18. So I'm being charitable by going 15, and we're not seeing many combatants ages 40 plus. So when
I have one interesting.
Wait, hold on. Wait, Matthew, let me just finish this point. So, but when I'm taking the range 16 to 50, Elon, that's being very charitable, because the amount of combatants there are 40 to 50 and 15 to 17 is very low. And again, people are doing a lot of work to try to find combatants of these ages, and we're finding single-digit, low double-digit numbers. So is it possible there's combatants outside of those ages? Sure, but we're talking about negligible numbers. Now, you say it also may be that the IDF mistakenly target a male by accident. Well, yeah, that's part of it, right? So males in wars are going to die at a higher rate for a few reasons, and that's one of them. They're more likely to be mistaken for being combatants. They're more likely to take risks like leave their home to get food, water, and aid. And they're more likely to work in dangerous jobs like first responders and journalists. So there's many reasons why men are being killed at a higher rate. But there's no reason to assume that there's any meaningful number of combatants outside that age group. Anyways, go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, one contrary point on the child. So I agree with you. What you were saying, of course, 95%. But as I say, I just went through this list of 67 of 67 combatants who are admitted by the DFLP, right? So there's no dispute as to what some language in open sources means on a obituary. These were admitted, and the age range was 16 to 51. So this supports what you were saying. There's literally nobody above 51, right? There were, though, 6 of them, so 9% of the total were boys 16 to 17. There was no one under 16, but there were. That's a larger number than, to be fair, I would have thought. And then another 9% or 6 were men 40 to 50. So that's more consistent with what I would have thought. Like, it's not many middle-aged men, but about 80% were men 18 to 36. So that's kind of consistent with what we were thinking. The only thing that's a little different is it may be a fluke, but the number of boys 16 to 17 was quite large compared to what I would have expected. A whole 9%, right? But the other assumptions held up very well. Nobody's over 51, nobody's under 16, and the overwhelming majority are young men, in their mid-30s or younger.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah.
Now, again, this is 67 fatalities. It's 67 fatalities. Could be skewed, right? This isn't. It's kind of like it's an interesting. It's enough sample size to be. It's enough of a sample to be interesting, but it's not necessarily enough of one to be, to be deeply corroborative. But it kind of corresponds to the large majority of what we're saying. Another thing that's interesting
and actually, hold on. Wait, Matthew, real quick, because Natan here is bringing up a good point that 3,500 Gazans actually were killed on October 7th. Well, it's 3,500 Gazans because a lot of them were. Can you hear me, Matthew?
Yeah.
35,000 Gazans.
I hear you.
Yeah, okay. 35,000 Gazans were killed on that day. Not all were fighters. Like a few thousand were like civilians that came into
3,500.
Yeah. Sorry. 3,500.
You said 35,000.
Yeah. 3,500. My bad.
Yeah, everyone knows he meant.
Yeah. A lot of them were like civilians that came in to loot and stuff. Some of the worst atrocities were actually committed by the civilians, in quotations, who came in. But a lot of the civilians just looted, took photos or whatever. They were also killed. But it's possible you have up to 3,500, and that would be 10% of the men that age. So that would actually be pretty significant if you have around 3,500 included in the data. It would change.
Yeah. We just have to. This is going to be a new research project.
Okay, cool.
It's going to be a new research project because, again, I'm going to tweet about this. We just have 5 names, so there are only 5 on this list who were killed on October 7th. But so can we draw robust conclusions for that? No. Can we have suspicions and conjectures? Yes, because 4 of the 5 are on the Ministry of Health list of these combatants. Now, I guess if you're on the Eisenberg side, you could say, oh, they're inflating by adding combatants killed on 7 October. I really don't think that it's good for their propaganda to add a few, let's say it's 1,000 or 2,000 people who are, 80% young men. I don't think it helps their propaganda, but they might claim that, because it does mean that the headline number gets higher, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm interested in seeing what the research comes up with. Let us know.
Yeah, but I mean, one thing I'm a little. I don't want to be too critical of people, but if I've not done very much research into combatants. This is the first really sustained research I've done in a while. I did some a few months ago, but I found this pretty quickly. I found all of these October 7th people are on the Ministry of Health list. So I do want to. You don't know, but I do kind of wonder if Buka or Gabriel. Let me put it more delicately. I think it'd be worthwhile to ask Gabriel if he has seen this, because this has bearing, right? Because what we're trying to figure out is how Israel conducted itself in Gaza. We already know from human rights investigations and so on that Israel killed very, very, very few civilians on October 7th in Israel. right? There's all these claims on the far left or the pro-Palestinian side, some of it that the Hannibal directive. No, the percentage of civilians killed on October 7th by Israel is very small. So if we want to assess Israel's conduct on October 7th toward Israeli civilians, it was quite good, it seems, right? If you look at the ratio, very good, it would seem. Especially given the chaotic circumstances. But
you're saying
you can't throw those combatants killed in.
You're saying the civilian to combatant ratio.
Right, I'm saying
on
the
October
ratio
7th?
of civilians to combatants. Go ahead.
No, you're saying the civilian to combatant ratio on October 7th was good?
Oh, for Israel, not for Hamas.
Well, it was around like 1.5. I mean, it was definitely much. Hamas killed a much better ratio than Israel.
Well, no, I'm talking about the IDF. I'm talking about the rate of friendly fire and so forth by the IDF. It was low on October 7th.
Rate of friendly fire.
Like they killed far more. The IDF.
Oh yeah,
the IDF
for sure,
for sure.
What
I'm trying to say, IDF killed. I think it's a little late for you, brother. The IDF killed far more combatant, like many, like probably maybe hundreds of times even, or maybe not quite that much, but something like that. They killed vastly more, infinitely more combatants and civilians in Israel, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my point. But so if you want to say yay Israel, you can mention those 3,000 or whatever it is combatants in the context of Israel, but you can't add them to Gaza. That's not legitimate because it doesn't relate to their targeting in Gaza.
Right. It's if you want to assess Gaza, you should separate the number of combatants that were killed on October 7th inside Israel. Yeah, that's a good point.
It'll just be the funniest thing ever if it ends up that now again I have to test this hypothesis, but it'll be the funniest thing ever if it turns out that like the big inflation in the Ministry of Health list was combatants. That will be very funny.
That would be interesting.
They'll try to use it if that's true. They'll try to use it to discredit it still, but it'll just be humorous at that point.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm excited to see what
really quick before I run, what do you think of the demographic profile? So, we had the overwhelming majority of these 67 as young men, under like mid-30s and under, but you also had 6 of them, so that's 9%, middle-aged, and another 6 as boys. I think the middle-age sounds right to you, but are you surprised that there was that many 16, 17-year-olds, or do you just think it's too small a data set to draw robust conclusions from? Because I have to admit that I would not have expected 9% of fatalities in this list to be, 16, 17-year-old boys.
Wait, but this is on October 7th?
No. This is every person in this DFLP. Remember, they released a list.
Oh, okay.
There were only 5 killed on October 7th. October 7th, I'm not even looking at the demographics because it's such a small.
So you're saying 9%, 9% throughout the entire war?
Correct.
I mean, does that no? I spoke about this like 30 minutes ago that the more like fringe militant groups are much more likely to bring in child soldiers. I think tell me how many Hamas fighters under 18 we found, right? You're going to see much less there. They're like the professional military group in Gaza, so they have the highest standards.
Yeah.
The smaller fringe ones, it's like it's your tribe, your family. You're like bringing in the teenage men of your family. You're 16, you're of age. Like it's not a professional military. Like, and you could say Hamas isn't a professional military, but for Gaza it is. That is the professional military. So overwhelmingly, Hamas is holding a certain standard. They will bring in younger people out of desperation, likely. But these other smaller groups, it's like, okay, this is my cousin. He just turned 16. Yalla, let's do it. I think it doesn't surprise me now.
Okay, so that's actually not inconsistent with your well, the one thing that's supported
not for the smaller groups. No, it doesn't surprise me for the smaller groups. No.
Yeah. Again, though, the age, no combatants over 51. Only 9% over 36. That is consistent with what we'd expect. So that part is.
Yeah. That all makes sense. And 9% under 18. And was there any under 16?
No.
Okay.
16 was the youngest.
Yeah, okay. No, it doesn't.
Which is a consistent pattern I found.
It doesn't surprise me. But what I think you'll see is when you look at Hamas and also probably Islamic Jihad, also to a similar extent, maybe lesser extent, you're going to see it much less than 9%. But I think when you look at the smaller groups, I think that's probably, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's, I mean, obviously 6 is a drop in the ocean, but if the demographic pattern holds, that would be different than we expect. But it wouldn't, I don't think it would change that much.
No, but
it's not that many 16, 17.
No, yeah. And again, for me, it's the only thing that matters is how many excess males there are of those age groups. And there's just not many, right? Like it's
yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting point.
But that's really
compared to the natural level.
That's the only thing that matters, really.
That's really good argument, actually, you have, because the excess boys at 13, I mean, as much as these people want to like portray Hamas as ISIS, Hamas does not recruit 13-year-old boys. They just don't to fight.
No, exactly.
I mean, you can pretend they do if you're, they don't. But yet your point is very interesting that the excess level, which is there at 13, is the same as 16, 17. Is that correct? Roughly?
Well, no, it's more so if you look at 15 to 17-year-old boys and 15 to 17-year-old girls, it's a 2,000 individual difference. But if you account for excess male deaths of all ages, you need to reduce that by 50% to account for like excess of all ages.
Yeah.
And then again, teenage boys are going to die at a higher rate than 5-year-old boys and 80-year-old men. So there's at most a few hundred child combatants present on the data just based on excess. Like I don't even.
Yeah, I think that's probably correct. So
I don't see how you could even argue against
excess, that. Wow, the total X. Let me look at this.
It's only.
I think that's actually, you're actually correct.
I looked at it today. It's like 2,000. Wow. Yeah. That's why the entire
the total excess. Wow, that's really remarkable. The total excess for 15 through 17 is, I'll just estimate it, 700, 600. 5, yeah, it's like around 2,000. That's there's not going to be.
It's a nothing burger. That's why everybody's saying that all these child combatants are on the list. It's bullshit. There's nothing in the data like pointing to that being the case.
I mean, could it be? Could it be? Could the excess be 50% this natural phenomenon than 1,000 combatants, or is that not plausible from your reading of it?
Well, I would say the most amount of combatants there would be. Let's. If you want to be very charitable, you say 1,000, because if 70-year-old men are dying at a 50% higher rate than 70-year-old women, and if 8-year-old boys are dying at a 50% higher rate than 8-year-old girls, then there's no reason to believe that 16-year-old boys are dying at anything less than a 50% higher rate than girls. But we should assume that.
I agree with you.
But we should assume that they're dying at more than a 50% higher rate because they're going to take the risks. They're going to be confused of being combatants. So it's going to be less than 1,000, right? We just, this is the big, we just don't know to what degree civilians of combatant age are being killed at a higher rate than civilians of non-combatant age. That's the biggest missing piece in the data. But you know they're being killed at a higher rate. You just don't know how much higher rate. And I don't know how we can figure that out. But so you want to be charitable.
I mean, if you look at 23, for example, and you compare it to 16. 16 is like a, under a 2.5 ratio of men to women, and 24 is over 3 to 1. So it is a lot smaller. It's amazing to me how small the ratios of even like the prime fighting age males are to women. I mean, it's just so low compared to the previous. I sent you some stuff on Discord, like. The ratio of 18-year-old men to women should not be less than 3 to 1. That's completely.
No, I know, it's crazy. Let me show you one more thing that I recently noticed. It doesn't really have all too much significance, but it is interesting. Because I don't think anybody else picked up on it. Maybe it's just not interesting enough. But
by the way, PIJ also released a bunch of names of commanders killed, not combatants generally. Gabriel Epstein is apparently identifying them with the MOH.
I saw that, yeah.
Their ages are going to be, but as I saw, their ages will be higher than the average. But I bet they still won't be over like 50.
So
in any case. But commanders are obviously older than like grunts.
So, yeah. I saw what he just posted, but I didn't look at it yet. But check this out. I'm sharing this on YouTube. Let me do a screen share to Discord as well. Okay, this is a chart I put together. This is based on the old data, but it's similar breakdown. You see how look at females ages 25 to 35. You see that bump? There's an excess of females of these ages. You see that? You see the females are the red.
Yeah.
You see how 25 to 35 there's an excess female deaths? Do you see that?
Right, yeah.
Wives. Those are the wives of combatants.
And where's daddies?
Yeah, or just combatants killed at home. These would be their wives. It's the only way to explain this interesting bump here, because I can't think of any other reason why women of that age would die.
Also, what about the other possibility? What about the possibility that I agree with you that it's part of it, but the other part is young women could run more risks than older women, even though they're not combatants. They could still be out more. You're a young, fit woman. 25,
but
30.
But why do you think the jump comes at like although what is the average age of getting married in Gaza? You would think it would be younger than 25 though, right?
Yeah, I think so. They have like I don't think they really get married below 16, but I think they do get married beginning
it's just that the spike of the males is different. It comes at a different age than the spike of the females. You're right, it could be different behaviors as well, but it's interesting how the spike of the females,
I think it's probably both,
is very concentrated.
Incidentally, Eisenberg, one of his many absurd attempts to prove the Ministry of Health was lying, was that the ratio of young men to women killed is something insane, like 3-to-1, barely more 3-to-1, which is insanely low. It's like young men we're talking about, not all young. It's like 3-to-1, which is insanely low. But the ratio of of orphans who have lost only a father to only a mother is like, I don't know, something like 8-to-1, 7-to-1. He's like, aha, they must be lying. And it's like, no, the reason that there's the reason that there's this disparity in female fatalities versus male, and children without a dad versus children without a mom, is that so many of the children are being killed with their moms, and where's daddies? So they can't be, if all the children are being killed with their mom, they can't be orphans, right?
Oh, interesting. Right, that would I remember that coming up a few months. It was like a year ago when that thing came up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's because think of a fighter who dies away from home, he could leave a bunch of orphans. But if the mom is out, if when the mom is dying, she's always being killed with her children, or not always, but very often, there's going to be fewer children with no mom because they've all been killed.
Okay, that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the Air Wars also had shocking data on this, that in October, at least, the large majority of the time when a woman died, she died with at least one of her children. I'm sorry, these people have lost their fucking minds, these Israelis. It's just,
I mean, Eisenberg's not even Israeli,
That we've had 2 years of lying about this, and that we're still trying to clean up the mess these people have made. I think we're going to. I'm more confident we're going to win the info war. I'm actually increasingly confident in that. And just to put a bow in this discussion, and let some of your other commentators talk, because I've bothered you enough today, Adar.
Yeah, I'm about to sign off anyway, so we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, yeah, but I'm also working on, let your audience know, I'm working on a project with I'll say a prominent academic, but many of you can probably guess who it is. But
it's not me
in this field, and we're basically, it's not Hadar. And we're basically cataloging all the wars we can find in like roughly the last half century, and we're comparing the proportion of women and children among violent fatalities in these wars. And as you can imagine, the IDF in Gaza is near the top. The only two cases we have so far, and we're not doing every time every act of terrorism ever, we're like, we have like a cutoff of like 100 people die or something, right? So you could find other cases below that. It's like major conflicts, right? But within that framework, the only two cases we can find worse than the IDF in Gaza, or even close, are the Rwandan genocide and the Cambodian genocide. So,
in terms of proportion of women and children relative to men?
In terms of the percentage of violent fatalities that are women or children. And
like relative to men.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And these are the demographics that like Eisenberg and implicitly Gabriel Epstein are saying are exonerating of Israel, or like, if you look at the last half century, it's basically like Israel is only better than the Khmer Rouge and the Rwandan genociders.
Right. Well, I think that's really what we need to do. Like every time people come out, this week I started writing a new analysis on the death toll. What inspired it was Gabriel Epstein, right? So every time they come out with their atrocity denialism, we just need to hit back harder with something. So they need to just, and honestly, one of the reasons I take issue with them is not just the atrocity denial, the propaganda, the fact that they're misinforming the Jewish people. It's that I need to do more work. I don't need to, but I feel some obligation to do more work because they're doing it. Like I want to stop talking and writing about the death toll. I'm sick and tired of it. But as long as there's, so like, I almost feel like they owe me money because time is money.
Well, here's what I hope.
Like Gabriel and Eisenberg owe me money at this point for making me work. Honestly, I'm gonna build them.
Yeah, I agree. I'm irritated with them too. But here's what I hope will happen. One, that this will be published at a reputable place that has like that has panache and a blue chip name. And two, that will have like a good visual aid, which illustrates all these conflicts. And it's like, you see everything, all these wars, every war you can think of, Iran-Iraq wars, way, quote unquote, Israel's way worse than that. So these are Saddam Hussein and Khomeini. That's what you're worse than, Israel. But so like every war you can think of in the last few years, for which we can find data, because there are some we can't. Like I don't think we'll find, sadly, Soviet war in Afghanistan. We just like some you just don't have high quality data. But war after war after war after war, and then it's like at the very bottom, it's Israel, like 47% or whatever ends up being women and children killed, and then it's two below those are Rwanda and Cambodia. And Nazi Holocaust would be worse too if we could find that data. But I don't think we actually have good data on that, honestly. We know the numbers are over 5 million fatalities, but I think that a lot of the stuff you see on websites about 1.5 million children, it's just hard to know. I mean, I think Yad Vashem's database, you might be able to add that up. I think there's a lot of glib estimates when it comes to the Holocaust, which I've written about before. It's definitely over 5 million, probably 5.2, 5.3, 5.4 are the best guesses. But like, there's they're glib estimates to try to make it add up to 6 million. Frankly, I don't want to be offensive to anybody. I'm not a Holocaust denier. People like
no. Honestly, in fact, of all the anti-Zionists, you have done I've seen you do the most work challenging Holocaust deniers. So, and I actually
there's absolutely nothing to Holocaust. Any Holocaust style meme. The only thing that I'm concerned about with I think there's increasingly a taboo about 6 million, which isn't scholarly or serious. I understand there's symbology and people have ways of remembering genocides, but if you get to the point where you say Raoul Hilberg's a Holocaust denier or someone like me, and I have a very detailed estimate as to why I think definitely over 5. It's 5.2, 5.3 are the best estimates, and 6 seems to be too high. So that's hundreds of thousands of people, right? That we can't justify.
Right.
It's a lot of people. So
right.
But I am worried about political correctness on that. But that's why you push back against it.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Anyway, though, bro, it looks like you're gonna wrap up.
Yeah. It's already 11 p.m. here. I've got to start winding it down. But thanks for hopping on.
Yeah.
And once you put out this new analysis, maybe we'll do a stream with you and the unnamed academic. You guys
I don't know
can,
when we'll be done, but it could be a few months. I really hope that's the go-to, because I'm fucking tired of this too. Like these people are liars, and we just go. Why don't we just have the debate about, was it Hamas human shields? I don't buy that at all. But was it Israeli policy? Was it intentional? Why is it so bad?
exactly. Yeah. Let's have a debate over the moral implications, not over the numbers. The numbers are not debatable at this point.
Or the cause of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yet we were still 2 years in this denialist discourse,
right?
Where it's a great ratio, and I think that the public doesn't buy it intuitively. I don't think they do, but having a visual aid from a credible journal showing the numbers, I think might put the nail in the coffin for the John Spencer ratio meme, which we've spent 2 years on now. So.
Yeah, we're gonna win this one for the sake of humanity.
I think we will. Yeah, I'm very confident, because they're just wrong to such a spectacular degree, and they also don't have public opinion on their side anymore either. So. Yeah, they have institutional power, but it's not so overwhelming as they think, really. So I think we will win it. I'm confident about that. Now, I think there are legitimate issues to debate. I think genocide's a legitimate debate. People get mad at me, but I'm not going to lie and pretend I don't think that. I think it depends how you define it. I've talked about that. I don't need to get into that, but I don't think it's certainly not debatable that this is, in terms of just the proportion of civilians killed, the proportion of women and children. This is like among the worst wars in the post-World War II era, for sure. And it looks much more like a genocide than a war. Those are just facts. You can debate whether it actually is a genocide, but in terms of the results, these are facts.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, right, Matthew. Thanks for hopping on. And yeah, we'll definitely talk soon.
Yeah. Sorry, Adar, the other thing?
Yeah, we'll I don't know. I'm gonna wind down. So the one-on-one chat you wanted to have, we'll do at some other point. But just so you know, Kufar, I did just have the opportunity to check in on Chechnya and also ask my friend. I got the gist of it. So here's the thing with Chechnya, and there's no way to reach a conclusion because they just don't have good data on it. So this is also with the help of some LLMs. I checked it across 3 LLMs. It's just the range. The death toll range goes between 50,000 and over 200,000. And it's not like when it's in Gaza where we have names and ID numbers. So you have a vast range by different parties claiming different things. The way they get the 200,000, and this has been pretty consistent with how when an adversary of the West is engaged in some kind of violence, the human rights organizations and Western media generally take the upper claim made by those experiencing the violence and just reproduce that. So the only basis for 200,000 is simply Chechen leaders saying that number. Again, it might be true, but you understand why this is a very, we need to be skeptical of that number, because there's just no way to corroborate it. We don't have names. We have nothing about them. It's simply that would be the equivalent of a Hamas official saying, you've killed hundreds of thousands, but no names and ID numbers. People would rightfully be skeptical of that, right? One party has an incentive to reduce the death toll. The other has an incentive to increase it. So we definitely shouldn't trust Russia's take on it, but we should be skeptical of the Chechen take on it. So it's very hard to, I don't know how to, if we want to take both 20th century, 21st century and compare it, I don't know how to. The LLMs are giving me a civilian to combatant ratio between 1.5 to 1 to 10 to 1. So I don't even know what to do with that, you know? If it's 10 to 1, then it's definitely comparable or worse than Gaza. If it's 1 to 5, it's much better than Gaza. If it's in the middle, maybe it's in the similar range. I just don't really know how to work through this, and I don't think anybody really has the answer. So I did promise. I promised you a response. So I don't know how to go deeper than that.
Expect the one for Yale, from Yale for Darfur. and for al-Fashir.
Yeah, well, the UN reports at 1,000, but if you have 1,000 children, if you have another source on that, send it to me.
It's yeah, I sent it in the stage. It says like 100,000. Sorry, not 100. 60, 70,000 civilians of all ages, of all demographics.
Oh yeah,
killed in like 3 weeks.
Of all demographics in 3. Okay, I'll look into
Yes.
that. I'll look into that. Cool, thank you. And we see Marco Mamba saying hello from Tel Aviv. Is this an anti-Semitic channel or no? You know, I like to describe myself as like a proud Jewish supremacist and a raging anti-Semite. So it really depends. But yeah, a little bit. Thoughts on Erica Lebon? I've never really looked at her stuff. She is beautiful, but what's her stance? I think she's like one who's like always underestimating the death toll in Gaza and over exaggerating in Iran. She's like she's in that camp. I could look more. I could look more into it. Marco Mamba, why shame on me? Why? Because I said I'm a proud Jewish supremacist and a raging anti-Semite. What part of that offended you? Lighten up, buddy. Lighten up. But yeah, sorry, Musa, I need to look more into Erica. Maybe we'll try to invite her on for a conversation. You know what? A question. I'm being reflective here to the female viewers. Is it at all sexist that when somebody asked me about Erica, I commented that I found her to be beautiful? Is there something sexist about that? Although I give men appreciation when they're very handsome. Like if there was like a Chad influencer, I'd be like, well, he's quite handsome. Although I'd be less inclined to make that remark for a man, I believe. Anyways, open to feedback. She is beautiful though. And with that, signing off, we're going to do another stream sometime in the next 2 days. Thank you all so much. And yeah, if you want, maybe the conversation will continue in Discord. We'll do like an after party. So join the Discord, link in the description. If not, see you next week. Much love from the beautiful Western Galilee in the land of Israel and Palestine.
Dar, just